In a world where jobs are fixed at birth, most remain villagers forever. A young man walks through his quiet home, questioning that order. Before a small church, he weighs the heavy cost required to change fate. Steady resolve pushes him inside. Across a desk, he signs a contract and pays 5,000 surl as proof. Soon after, a status plate confirms the ritual succeeded instantly. At last, the result names him warrior, and fulfillment replaces doubt. As a warrior, he studies weapon choices and recognizes the limits villagers face against rising monsters. Nearby, Kaname Morimoto, bearing an unknown job, accepts the thanks with calm composure. Respect forms quietly between them. After leaving, Kaname returns to the shop and resumes ordinary duties. Responsibility settles back onto his shoulders. Inside, Kulne Rosesthal, a skilled swordsman, reflects on recent growth and suggests closing early. Outside, a fairy rabbit appears, reminding them that even peaceful days hold quiet mysteries. The next day, they discuss how attributes influence future jobs. Kaname believes she already holds hidden potential. Gently, he admits he cannot sense strong affinity for a spear, despite her local reputation. Uncertainty clouds her face. Beside them, the fairy rabbit remains still as patience is encouraged before any decision. Suddenly, word arrives that giant rats attack the north gate, forcing action. Immediately, Kulne rushes out, displaying the skill of the village's only specialized swordsman. Confidently, Adelina chooses to accompany them, revealing unexpected martial skill. Resolve shows in her stance soon. They move toward the north gate as Chiaro follows. Beyond the fence, giant rats surge through the grass. Swiftly, Kulne strikes the first beasts, cutting them down before villagers. However, more creatures rush forward, their numbers overwhelming the path. Drawing on her training, Kulne releases a swordsman technique that drives the swarm backward. Several giant rats collapse, yet more continue advancing. Kulne notices her blade, losing sharpness, as grease dulls its edge. From the forest, another pack approaches, nearly 20 strong. Kaname realizes the danger escalating beyond control, determined to help. Adelina steps forward with her spear, refusing to leave everything to Kulne. Suddenly, Chiaro leaps and strikes a massive rat, crushing it with unexpected force. Afterward, they understand the rabbit possesses a rare job, revealing abilities far beyond an ordinary creature. Adelina reflects on never becoming a spear master, despite years of practice and admiration for the one who once saved her. During battle, she wonders whether her strength can ever reach that level or truly protect someone. Later, she admits her limits and believes gaining a job may break the barrier holding her back. After confirming her resolve, Kaname prepares to perform the change. As the ritual begins, a strange sensation surrounds her, marking the start of transformation. Adelina unleashes a blazing lance of fire, revealing her new role as magician and forcing the remaining rats back. Swiftly, she controls the flames with precision, confirming her natural affinity for magic soon. The battle ends as Chiaro returns to Kaname, and the last monsters fall silent. Afterward, the group acknowledges each other's strength and expresses gratitude for the victory. Finally, rumors about the job change shop gain credibility as quiet satisfaction settles over them. After seeing Adelina off, Kaname meets a visitor inside the shop, while gifts from the Guardian Corps rest nearby. The elegant stranger approaches closely, observing the swordsman with unusual interest and calm confidence. Soon, he reveals he traveled because of rumors surrounding the job change shop and witnessed the earlier battle. Unexpectedly, he introduces himself as the 12th Prince of Clodia, surprising everyone present. The prince questions Kaname's origin and authority, hinting at deeper intentions behind his visit. Calmly, Kaname clarifies that his shop operates under the village general store registration and does not require special authorization under current law. Attentively, the prince evaluates this explanation while subtly steering the discussion toward Kaname's underlying intentions, rather than respond directly. Kaname faces a pointed inquiry about how he acquired such an extraordinary ability. Measured restraint shapes his reply, emphasizing that public knowledge would trigger disorder within the capital and society. Ultimately, he warns that formalizing job change as a profession could fracture the kingdom's established class structure. Calmly, the prince warns that the church will not ignore Kaname, since job changes threaten its profitable influence. Seriously, he asks how Kaname intends to confront such powerful opposition. Unexpectedly, Adelina raises her hand and declares she and Chiaro will handle security. Amused, the prince comments on Kaname being protected by a girl and a rabbit, then extends an offer. Finally, he reveals his desire to present Kaname to the world, exposing his existence beyond the village. Thoughtfully, the prince proposes a solution that could bypass authority limits and reduce conflict surrounding the shop. Confidently, he invites Kaname to lead a temple in the capital, aiming to spark change within the kingdom. Kaname learns the nation once nearly collapsed from religious wars, leading every cult to a composed priest, explains strict rules now forbid internal conflict, maintaining order under the unified faith. Using influence, the priest offers Kaname a recommendation to the royal capital's seminary. Doubts emerge since Kaname is foreign, and rural regions lack churches. Understanding job changes fund the church, Kaname confronts questions about his knowledge. The priest proposes that Kaname graduate, become legitimate, and freely establish his own job change temple under protection. Considering compensation, the priest unexpectedly suggests friendship as reward, catching Kaname off guard. Pressed further, he requests a single undocumented job change, yet Kaname firmly refuses. Plans shift toward Rivi Fair Town, where time for reflection is granted, though expectation remains. Left alone, Kaname grows exhausted, doubting the flashy priest's intentions and feeling deeply wary. A girl asks whether Kaname will attend the seminary, while he admits he loses nothing by going. Determined, Kaname decides to verify the priest's claims and seeks someone trustworthy in the royal capital. He learns the village elder's daughter, Milty, lives there. Offering a possible connection, together they visit the elder, who welcomes them warmly as Kaname plans to send Milty a letter. The doting father chats proudly, leaving Kaname thoughtful about his next step. The village elder explains that monsters from the Great Forest are increasing abnormally, placing nearby settlements under growing threat. Although the kingdom was asked for aid, no soldiers arrived, leaving the region facing a dangerous crisis alone. Reluctant to burden his daughter, the elder instead asks Kaname, now a job holder, to inspect the forest situation. Recalling several villagers changed jobs at his temple, Kaname considers available strength within the small community. Learning the population is roughly 200, he evaluates their limited capacity carefully. Kaname suggests forming a reconnaissance team and offering discounted job changes to gather more participants. Kulnan shows concern for his safety, but he remains determined to protect everyone. The elder thanks him sincerely, placing hope in Kaname's judgment. He organizes the group carefully, prioritizing healers, then archers and magicians for balanced combat. 15 days later, the assembled team clashes with monsters as thunder magic crashes across the battlefield. Kaname coordinates the team as silver wolves approach, maintaining order while Kulna supports from behind. Archer Ellen Tasanoa secures the flank efficiently, proving her experience in the forest. Healer Siegfried Selrin, once saved by Kaname, reinforces the group with steady recovery skills. After the skirmish, Ellen gathers materials, while guiding Siegfried through fieldwork basics. Under instruction, Siegfried performs a precise finishing strike, ensuring the fallen monster is completely dead. After defeating the silver wolves, the team begins processing the carcasses while noting how easily they were handled. Kaname observes that job holders' abilities exceed expectations, as the fallen wolf confirms its class ranking. Adelina requests the map, drawing attention to their route and recent sightings. Studying marked locations, Kaname realizes monster appearances form an arc toward the forest's center. As they advance eastward, Adelina senses unusual mana intensifying near the core. Siegfried struggles with a strange sensation, questioning whether healing magic can treat mental interference as the forest grows oppressive. Kaname orders caution, urging everyone to stay alert, while Adelina suggests solving problems step by step. Kulnan encourages the group confidently, praising their teamwork and strengthening morale. Suddenly, Ellen halts the formation, sensing movement deeper among the trees. Straining to detect distant presences, she identifies multiple figures ahead, possibly human, prompting immediate vigilance. Kaname confirms another presence within the forest, after the archer's detection leaves no doubt. An uneasy pressure spreads as the group senses a large concentration of mana ahead. Suspecting a link between the figures and the mana source, Kaname orders careful movement. They stop at a clearing where the energy feels strongest and prepare to investigate. Examining disturbed soil, the team considers digging despite uncertainty about what was removed. Ellen confirms no one is nearby, yet the forest feels unnaturally silent and distant. Advancing carefully, she notes the absence of monsters, deepening the group's unease. Kaname is called over as tension rises, and withdrawal is briefly considered. At the clearing's center, they find only an empty pit where something should have been buried. Concluding that an object emitting mana was removed earlier, Kaname suspects someone retrieved it and fled. Kaname recalls the earlier presence and notes the mana here feels thicker than at its supposed origin. Siegfried remembers encountering a strange hooded group when he was once lost in this forest. Those cloaked figures acted hostile and refused directions, driving him away. He estimates the encounter occurred about a month ago, before meeting heavy monster activity. Comparing timelines, the team suspects that group buried an object here, possibly connected to the recent surge. Kaname concludes the buried object likely caused abnormal monster movements toward the village. While some suspect a monster repellent, others question why such an item would be left behind. Considering the cost of powerful mana tools, they suspect nobles from the capital may be involved. With the object already removed, Adelina reasons the remaining mana should gradually fade, despite uncertainty. She insists they cannot ignore the matter, and prepares to act decisively. Kaname orders silence, uneasy about the lingering mana, and uncertain whether the disturbance will fade naturally. Ellen suddenly moves ahead, reacting sharply to a presence deeper within the forest. Sensing imminent danger, she warns the group to run as tension spikes instantly. Startled, Kaname struggles to grasp the situation while panic spreads among them. A massive dragon bursts from the trees, confirming the mana source and plunging the team into crisis. Aelin remains composed while the others panic. Realizing the Earth Dragon explains the monsters moving toward the village. As the massive creature roars above the trees, Kaname understands their earlier suspicions were correct, and danger has escalated. Kaname runs through the grass, tracking massive footprints heading toward the village, while urgency rises behind him. Suddenly, his companion shoves him down as something enormous approaches from ahead. A colossal tail sweeps across the field, crushing wood and earth in a single violent motion. After the strike passes, the group regathers near the wreckage, confirming no one has fallen. Realizing escape is impossible, Kaname prepares a plan to weaken the creature and buy time. The dragon lowers its massive body, blocking the path as Kaname steadies himself before the beast. Without hesitation, the armored warrior charges forward while the spearwoman moves to engage. First supporters spread out behind them, as steel meets scales and the monster fixes on its challenger. Flames strike the creature's head, yet the attack fails, leaving the team shaken by its resistance. Retreating beneath the trees, Kaname watches the dragon closely, questioning why their strategy cannot break through. The dragon unleashes a violent shockwave, shattering the ground as Loris braces himself before the blast. Cracks spread across the earth while the team realizes their combined strikes have achieved nothing. Amid the chaos, Kaname studies the creature's eyes and senses something deeply unnatural. Recognition dawns as he understands the dragon does not move with true malice, but with forced obedience. Grim suspicion forms within him, concluding that some hidden power may be controlling the dragon against its will. A violent force throws Kaname and his companion aside, their weapons skidding across the shattered ground. Moments later, Loris and Kulnan collapse, blood pooling beneath them as the team struggles to rise. Assessing the injuries, Kaname urges immediate healing while prioritizing the most critical condition. Silence falls as he turns toward Adelina, his expression sharpening with sudden resolve. Determination settles within him, and he requests her spear, preparing to attempt a decisive strike. Kaname orders Chiaro to take the lead, entrusting support to his allies as he grips the borrowed spear. The small creature charges first, drawing the dragon's attention while the others commit to the risky plan. Power gathers around Kaname's arm as he focuses entirely on defeating the overwhelming foe. Bursting forward with unnatural speed, he sprints across the battlefield and leaps toward the towering beast. Divine force concentrates at the spear's tip before he drives it downward in a decisive strike. Kaname drives the empowered spear into the dragon's skull, releasing a crushing force that pierces through its defenses. The massive body collapses heavily, dust and debris rising as the beast finally falls motionless. Momentum carries Kaname forward and he is hurled through the air after the impact. Before he hits the ground, Kulna rushes in and catches him, preventing a painful landing. Breathing unsteadily, they remain close for a moment, relief settling in after surviving the battle. Tears gather in Kulni's eyes as she remains close to Kaname, overwhelmed by relief after the fierce battle. Around them, the others confirm their safety while Kaname awkwardly accepts the gratitude directed at him. Soon, the dragon's body begins to dissolve, its massive form fading into drifting mana. As they prepare to return, Kaname quietly reflects on the strange power he seemed to draw in. The following day, his weapons rest on a table while questions linger about what truly happened. Kaname explains that during the battle he performed a job change on himself for a brief moment. Limitations quickly follow, as he reveals the power lasts only seconds and demands a long recovery. Curiosity spreads among the group when they ask what class he obtained through that risky decision. With uncertainty, Kaname states he likely became a Dragon Knight at that instant. Shock fills the room as they recognize the title as an exceptionally rare and superior class. Sieg returns carrying an object he discovered after the battle, drawing everyone's attention to the table. Placed before them, the circular device appears ancient, marked with symbols, and fitted with embedded nails. Kaname studies it carefully, and concludes the item was used to control the Earth Dragon through mana manipulation. The others question whether he erased the strange energy during his final strike. Uncertain of the full truth, Kaname admits the effect was not simple, and wonders if it relates to his new class. Kaname tests the strange power again, sensing he can activate it, though the sensation unsettles him. After observing the results, the group concludes the ability is impressive, yet impractical in ordinary combat. Attention shifts when Sieg kneels beside a heavy bundle brought from the battlefield. Unwrapped on the table, thick cuts of earth dragon meat are revealed, preserved before they could spoil. Excitement replaces tension as they realize the rare meat can be shared with the entire village. Kaname tastes the cooked dragon meat, while Kolne happily enjoys her portion beside him. Across the village, families gather around tables, savoring the rare meal with visible delight. The village elder thanks Kaname sincerely, praising his judgment in forming a capable party. Though embarrassed by the attention, Kaname listens as others insist his deed will become a heroic tale. Later, news arrives with a reply from Milty, sparking fresh curiosity among the group. A messenger delivers several letters addressed to Kaname, and he accepts them while Kolne watches closely. Standing aside, he reads through the contents with a calm but serious expression. After finishing, Kaname explains that the message suggests Prince Ricardo can be trusted. Thoughts turn toward the royal capital, and the possibility of traveling there weighs on him. Noticing his resolve, Kolne quietly asks whether he will return once his journey is complete. Kolne reassures Kaname that their parting will not mean separation, promising they will meet again. With practical confidence, she advises him to prepare properly and gather supplies before departing for the royal capital. Smiling brightly, Kolne even suggests hiring additional guards to ensure his safety on the journey. As they speak, thoughts shift toward Prince Ricardo, and Kaname considers bringing dragon meat as a gesture of goodwill. Kaname arrived at the residence after accepting a proposal connected to his future. Inside, a noble received him kindly and encouraged a more relaxed manner while they spoke about his circumstances. Rumors were mentioned, and Kaname sensed the noble clearly understood his own delicate position. Documents later revealed the 12th prince was neglected despite his title and lived without proper respect. For Kaname's scholarship, Prince Ricardo bowed to powerful officials, enduring humiliation. Kaname realized Prince Ricardo risked his life by openly supporting him, proving the depth of his commitment. At Riviere, rumors spread about an adventurer team from a remote region that hunted rank monsters and defeated a dragon. Discussion turned lively when dragon meat was mentioned, revealing the prince had unknowingly tasted it before. Regaining focus, Kaname prepared to question Ricardo about the dragon and related matters. Evidence suggested the magic item was man-made, with mysterious mana traces remaining on the dragon. Ricardo admitted he could not confirm a link between the dragon and the magic item, suggesting the mana traces might come from another source. Reports indicated certain groups had managed to brainwash lesser dragons, though such creatures were not yet usable as military forces. Kaname reasoned these experiments could be happening within their own country, creating a serious hidden threat. Attention shifted to the forest dragon, raising doubts about whether higher-ranked species could also be controlled. Ricardo realized the possibility changed everything. Composure remained on Kaname's face as discussion returned to the defeated dragon and the unusual events afterward. Concern arose when Ricardo pointed out that no prior rumors placed such a creature near Riviere. Considering the mystery, Kaname proposed it may have been transported from the eastern forest to avoid notice. Attention then shifted toward the Melheim Empire as a possible force behind the incident. Unease deepened as Ricardo advised silence, troubled by the number of suspicious people involved. Ricardo warned that if many job holders were being gathered, the church would never remain silent about it. He promised to investigate the matter secretly, and urged Kaname not to draw attention at the seminary, shifting the mood. Ricardo decided to prepare what Kaname would need from that point onward. Outside, he explained that a status plate recorded identity, birthplace, occupation, and abilities as proof of citizenship. They arrived at the town hall, where Kaname would officially receive his plate. Ricardo guided Kaname through a discreet back entrance reserved for important guests. Inside, he introduced Kaname to Tolis, the supervisor assigned to handle the registration. Tolis confirmed Kaname's purpose and prepared to oversee the creation of his status plate. While Ricardo and the young woman waited in another room, Kaname was led further inside. He entered a grand hall where officials processed documents and formally established status plates. Tolis explained that Kaname came from a remote region and therefore never possessed a status plate before. After confirming his identity, the officials accepted his application and began processing the necessary records. With documents completed, he was instructed to proceed through the designated gate for the next step. Crossing the archway, Kaname entered a vast interior and paused in astonishment. Before him stood intricate machines said to originate from an ancient civilization. Kaname stood beneath the towering machine while officials collected his documents and began the registration process. Moments later, the procedure finished, and a newly issued status plate was handed to him. Holding the dark plate, he learned it would soon display his personal information once activated. Ricardo greeted the result with open satisfaction, clearly pleased that everything proceeded smoothly. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, the young woman cheerfully finished the sweets prepared for them. Kaname returned to the waiting room and examined his newly issued status plate while the others watched with curiosity. Both companions leaned closer, eager to see what information had appeared on the surface. The plate displayed an unfamiliar classification, labeling him as a stranger rather than a normal citizen. Ricardo reasoned that people from another continent were regarded that way under ancient systems. Sensing danger in further discussion, Kaname shifted the topic before revealing too much. Kaname diverted attention by asking Ricardo about a specific skill displayed on the status plate. Ricardo examined the plate closely, surprised to see an unfamiliar ability related to mana conversion. They concluded the skill likely gathered mana and transformed it into physical strength. Recognizing its rarity, Ricardo remarked that Kaname possessed unusual talents worth caution. With departure approaching, Kaname learned he must leave within 3 days to reach the royal capital on time. Before parting, Ricardo firmly reminded Kaname not to draw unnecessary attention at the seminary. 3 days later, Kaname prepared to depart, confirming his belongings and travel money. At the carriage, he and Kolny exchanged careful farewells, aware they would not meet again soon. Soon after, several companions gathered, insisting on properly seeing him off. With cheerful assurances that the village remained safe, they promised to return swiftly after escorting him. Before departure, a companion handed Kanem a bundle of dragon jerky as a farewell gift. Smiling warmly, he received encouragement to do his best and returned safely with stories. Kulnan promised she would visit someday, her voice filled with determination. The carriage finally rolled forward as Kaname thanked everyone and waved goodbye. 1 month later, the journey continued with Kaname traveling steadily toward his destination. Kaname leaned from the carriage window, smiling as the royal capital finally came into view. Beyond the fields, towering walls and the distant castle confirmed their arrival at the vast city. Inside the capital, a young woman moved along the streets, pausing briefly before hurrying onward. Meanwhile, Kaname rested in the carriage, quietly wondering about the path awaiting him within the capital. Kaname entered the royal capital of Norbis, observing crowded streets, merchants, and tall buildings. Excitement filled him as he walked ahead, but distraction caused him to bump into someone in the busy street. Facing the stranger, he noticed large horns and realized human beasts existed here. Mentioning his remote village, Kaname listened as a bald man asked whether monsters had taken over his homeland. Reports revealed rising rock lizard attacks, driving many villagers to escape toward the capital for protection. The bald man asked about Kaname's destination, mentioning unrest and monster outbreaks, creating profitable opportunities for certain shops nearby. Afterward, Kaname approached the large gate to the high street. Officials stopped him at the checkpoint and required presentation of his status plate before granting passage inside. They instructed him to show his enrollment license first, to avoid drawing suspicion during inspection. He learned that revealing his occupation as stranger could trigger unrest if discovered openly at the gate. A guard examined Kaname and presented a card, stating his job change ability was required for the procedure. The document displayed villager Kaname Morimoto, confirming his identity and origin for verification. After clipping the device onto his status plate, he received clearance and a pass to proceed. Authorization completed. The guard permitted him to enter the high street beyond the gate. Beyond the checkpoint, Kaname stood before a spacious plaza surrounded by towering buildings and a statue at its center. Kaname scanned the plaza map, searching for directions while observing pedestrians crossing the open square. Suddenly, an elderly man stumbled and collided with a passerby, causing brief confusion as a woman hurried to support him. From a short distance, Kaname watched the pair carefully, noting the old man's strained condition and unstable posture. After a short exchange, the elderly man decided to leave, supported by the woman as they turned away. Left alone, Kaname reflected calmly, realizing that troublesome elders seemed common regardless of the world. A young woman approached Kaname, thanking him for helping earlier and apologizing for any inconvenience caused. She bowed sincerely, emphasizing that his support had truly saved her during the brief disturbance. Seeing the map he carried, she asked about his destination and offered assistance. They reviewed the map together, and she pointed out a shortcut leading toward the seminary. After expressing appreciation, Kaname waved farewell and walked away, while she remained watching quietly. Kaname walked onward, realizing he had forgotten to ask the woman's name while heading toward his destination. Soon he arrived before a large stone academy, wondering if she might be a fellow student there. Inside his assigned dormitory room, he dropped his belongings and rested briefly, relieved after the long journey. While reviewing his documents, he confirmed the dorm and classrooms were nearby, feeling more comfortable in the private space. A small rabbit companion stirred excitedly, and Kane noticed the dorm even allowed animals to stay. Kaname stepped into a vast hall with towering arches, searching for the right place as his rabbit rested quietly on his head. A cat-eared girl named Maribel Clan greeted him warmly, expressing happiness about welcoming a new student. Close by, a large black panther watched silently, its presence steady and imposing. Soon, a dragon appeared beside another girl, surprising Kaname with its size. Tension rose as the panther and dragon faced each other, overshadowing the small rabbit between them. The rabbit stood proudly between the panther and dragon, its small figure radiating confidence, despite the overwhelming presence surrounding it. Nearby, others observed Kaname quietly, recognizing his name while noting the rabbit's remarkable ability to communicate. On his first day of school, Kaname prepared himself nervously and stepped forward in his uniform. A cheerful young man approached, introducing himself as Cornelio Milton and identifying Kaname without hesitation. With energetic enthusiasm, Cornelio insisted on friendship, while Kaname accepted the lively encounter with cautious curiosity. Cornelio suggested celebrating their meeting and proposed sharing a meal together after classes ended. He mentioned knowing a good restaurant, showing clear interest in spending more time with Kaname. With casual familiarity, Cornelio placed an arm around him and insisted they get along as classmates. The next morning, he greeted everyone loudly, drawing attention as he entered the classroom. Students turned toward the noise, and Kaname noticed a girl quietly observing while the room filled with curiosity. A stern student introduced himself as Schmidt Dino Basque before class and announced he had something important to declare. With intense eyes, he stated his origin from the Basque family and allegiance to a chief god's belief. Smiling confidently, Schmidt offered to arrange affiliation for anyone wishing to join his sect. Another student questioned his claims and mentioned a different belief, interrupting the bold declaration. Calmly, the challenger rejected the existence of a chief god in general, doctrine, and urged him to stop spreading false statements. A girl defended her faction, arguing that many believers supported the church and that their god should be acknowledged as chief. Another student cautioned that internal disputes were forbidden, yet Schmidt brushed aside the warning confidently, angered by interference. Schmidt shouted at the girl, causing classmates to react with discomfort. Kaname chuckled softly at the heated exchange, unintentionally drawing Schmidt's focus. Remaining composed, Kaname introduced himself as unaffiliated and offered a polite greeting. Schmidt mocked Kaname's background, questioning how someone from a remote village could enroll in the seminary. Kaname responded calmly, suggesting Schmidt was not as noble as he believed himself to be. Irritated, Schmidt accused him of being nothing more than a mere savage. Unfazed, Kaname challenged whether such a temper suited someone claiming to lead church believers. Enraged, Schmidt declared the remarks blasphemous toward his god, drawing tense silence from surrounding classmates. Kaname calmly clarified that his mockery targeted Schmidt personally, not the god he claimed to defend. Schmidt insisted Kaname showed no fear and questioned how he dared to speak so lightly. Unmoved, Kaname suggested Schmidt was acting as though he were a divine spokesman unable to forgive. He added that invoking a god's name to justify personal feelings was inappropriate. Silence followed in the classroom as Schmidt lowered his head, while Kaname realized he might have gone too far. A long-haired man warned Kaname in memory not to attract attention at the seminary. Under any circumstances, Kaname placed a hand on his chest and admitted silently that he had likely broken that promise. Suddenly, Schmidt addressed him harshly, reigniting the confrontation before the class. With anger visible, Schmidt stepped forward and loudly challenged Kaname to a capless duel. Hearing the unfamiliar term, Kaname stiffened, realizing the situation had escalated beyond a simple argument. A classmate mentions a capless, and Kaname shows confusion while others react with surprise at his ignorance. Another student rebukes him for lacking basic knowledge despite holding a scholarship, leaving him embarrassed and silent. The rules of capless are explained as a formal contest between sects, meant to settle disputes peacefully under strict traditions. Instructor Marcus Artan introduces himself and announces the postponed entrance ceremony before beginning class. Marcus calls on Kaname and Schmidt to demonstrate a capless for everyone. A heated student demands expulsion if he wins the contest, but Marcus calmly states that no bets will determine the outcome. Marcus refuses all wagers and declares the match part of today's lesson, removing any personal stakes. The arrogant challenger boasts that Kaname will suffer humiliation even without conditions attached to victory. Composure returns as Marcus asks everyone to sit before explaining the structure of the contest. Rules are clarified, and Kaname with Schmidt are told to choose their respective events. The challenger selects the event called Ulysses' Journey, recalling a saint who once ran across nations to save a Miko. Rules are announced, requiring 10 laps around the schoolyard, assisted by a second participant during the run. With confidence, he appoints Mayuska de Merle as his partner, surprising the classroom. Mayuska is revealed as a healer and saint candidate within the church faction, drawing attention from everyone present. Pressure rises as he reminds her of their shared faction, while Kaname quietly considers his response. Kaname requests Freddy's support, and the boy agrees despite lacking any notable abilities. With preparations complete, the instructor leads everyone to the schoolyard to begin the first event. Resolve strengthens within Kaname as the challenger laughs, already convinced of his own victory. Exhaustion overwhelms the arrogant runner, and he collapses before finishing the required laps. The instructor raises his voice and announces Kaname Morimoto as the winner of the first capless event. Mayuska exhausts herself using healing magic to support the race, nearly collapsing from the strain, while others praise Kaname's physical strength. Kaname reflects privately, admitting he boosted himself with stolen mana and evolved his job to Exceeder to secure victory. Marcus asks him to choose the next event, and Kaname quietly resolves to apologize afterward. Unable to change jobs again, he requests an event involving animals instead of myths. An event requiring animals to destroy large rocks is proposed, and Kaname accepts it. Marcus instructs both sides to prepare animal partners and moves the second event to the abandoned former school building. Kaname considers relying on Chiaro, while the class prepares to gather again after lunch. The second event begins, requiring each team to shatter a large stone slab into smaller pieces with animal assistance. Kaname asks Chiaro to break the stone, unsure whether the small creature understands his request. Suddenly, Chiaro's body glows as it charges forward, astonishing everyone watching. Chiaro dashes forward and shatters the stone slab instantly, sending fragments across the abandoned building and leaving the opposing team stunned. Dust settles over the rubble as Marcus signals for the action to stop, confirming the slab has been reduced beyond the required measure. Marcus formally announces Kaname Morimoto as the winner of the second event. Students gather, offering praise to Kaname and Chiaro for their decisive victory. A woman named Serene introduces herself, intrigued by Kaname and his unusual companion. A composed researcher named Eddie Remington approaches Kaname, examining Chiaro closely and identifying the creature as a fairy rabbit. Interest deepens, as Eddie decides to make the rare rabbit his next research subject, while others watch with surprise. Marcus interrupts, reminding everyone that class has only just begun despite the earlier events. Back inside, he explains that the capless demonstration is part of their official curriculum. Students open their textbooks as Marcus begins a lesson about the origin of their faith. During the lecture, Kaname learns that a religious great war erupted a century ago, blamed on the continent's declining civilization. Marcus explains that powerful religious groups intensified the conflict, oppressing rivals and reducing their numbers. Smaller organizations faced dissolution as larger factions struggled for survival and dominance. Two leading shrines united their influence and established a formal religious statement that reshaped the continent's balance. The doctrine declared mutual non-aggression among faiths, and a student correctly answers Marcus's question about its meaning. Marcus outlines the four main religious factions within the global organization and explains their broad influence. Although disputes are officially forbidden, lingering tension remains among believers who were once divided. To prevent further conflict, leaders created the capless as a structured alternative to open warfare. Class concludes with a promise to discuss each faction in detail the following day, leaving Kaname exhausted. As students depart, Kaname notices Mayuska nearby and approaches her carefully. Kaname approaches Mayuska and admits responsibility for her exhaustion during the race. He confesses using mana conversion to draw part of her power into himself, and asks her to keep it secret. Despite his apology, Mayuska reassures him that supporter and competitor share the same responsibility. She explains she recently arrived in the capital as a healer and has few close connections. Smiling warmly, Mayuska expresses happiness at finding a comrade with similar abilities, then shyly apologizes for speaking too much. Kaname parts ways with Mayuska after a calm exchange, feeling encouraged by their growing understanding. Soon after, a friend teases him about the encounter, while another reminds him of a forgotten promise, pulling him back to reality. Kaname meets a classmate at a small restaurant table and receives news about a special role with certain conditions attached. The classmate grows enthusiastic, urging cooperation and reminding him they attend the same academy and should work together. Listening carefully, Kaname acknowledges the proposal, while sensing there are additional matters to discuss privately. A calculating look appears as suspicion rises about unseen support behind Kaname's recent admission. Remaining composed, he questions whether his scholarship status caused this confrontation. Kaname listens as the student explains his family's long service in the Regency and their considerable influence within the commune. Further details about status and expectations emerge, yet Kaname declines to reveal private matters about himself. The student describes scholarship paths, church selections, and nobles sending sons away to sever inheritance ties. Smiling lightly, he admits he cannot become heir and instead aims for a church administrative role. Afterward, Kaname reflects silently, recognizing that everyone carries personal struggles. Kaname calmly states that his acceptance was due to personal faith, dismissing suspicion about hidden backing from his distant homeland. A teasing smile follows as he withdraws the claim, revealing it was only a joke meant to lighten tension. He admits gathering information out of habit, explaining his earlier probing came from curiosity rather than hidden motives. Both acknowledge their excessive caution and decide to end the strained discussion peacefully. The mood softens as food arrives, and the classmate offers to cover the meal in apology. Kaname eats quietly, showing rare satisfaction as he enjoys the meal before him. His companion challenges his thoughts on pleasure, insisting his understanding is mistaken. Soon lively women gather nearby, shifting attention toward a small rabbit in Kaname's arms. Confidently, the companion attempts to impress them, speaking proudly while referencing charm and pets. Feeling overwhelmed, Kaname holds the rabbit tightly, enduring the noise as pressure surrounds him. Kaname's companion boasts boldly, warning others not to underestimate his confidence in handling any situation. Hours later, Kaname stands awkwardly with the rabbit, feeling embarrassed after the earlier display. Soon, several muscular men surround them in a narrow alley, questioning his recent behavior. Tension rises as the men accuse him of approaching someone improperly, blocking any easy escape. Before matters escalate further, a sudden strike lands, leaving Kaname realizing he misjudged the danger. A charging attacker is suddenly struck in the face by the small rabbit, stopping him mid-motion. Cries erupt as lightning, like force bursts outward, scattering the surrounding men in panic. With the threat broken, Kaname checks on his companion, while the attackers flee down the alley. Surprised by what he witnessed, the companion questions Kaname about his connection to the unusual creature. The rabbit proudly displays its ability, revealing itself as a special being suited for a beastmaster's command. Kaname receives a small item as gratitude, while his companion comments on the unusual nature of a beastmaster studying at the seminary. The gift is revealed to be an ornate mask, which Kaname immediately rejects with visible discomfort. Despite protest, the companion insists he keep it as proof of their friendship before they part ways. The next day, tension lingers in class as Kaname senses someone watching him with unresolved resentment. Soon after, a cheerful girl greets him warmly, shifting the atmosphere unexpectedly. Kaname is approached by a cheerful girl who explains she came to the seminary hoping to meet him again. With a bright smile, she expresses gratitude for his help during their previous encounter. They sit together for tea and cake, and Kaname quietly enjoys the sweets she recommends. During their talk, she mentions an elderly magician and clarifies that he has not troubled her since. Finally, she reveals she studies at a magic research institute and aims to develop an entirely new form of magic. The girl recounts paying a magician since villagers could not demonstrate the revival spell themselves. Back at the table, she explains capable magicians are scarce, leaving her few alternatives. Carefully, she shares rumors that someone besides the church's saint can perform job changes. Though trusting her source, uncertainty remains about whether that information was mistaken. Abruptly, the elderly magician approaches, confronting them about their unexpected reunion. Kaname grabs the girl's hand and rushes from the cafe as the elderly magician chases after them. Cornered in an alley, the old man warns them to consider their positions and threatens her institute. Ignoring protests, he smugly proposes a private dinner, implying control over her future opportunities. When challenged, he raises a powerful gale orb, preparing to assert dominance through magic. Kaname shields her, countering the spell despite injury, determined to weaken the attack and protect her. Despite the danger, the girl steps forward, declaring her trust in Kaname as he struggles to stand. She raises her hand and prepares a spell, refusing to let the magician continue his assault. A blast surges down the alley, forcing the old man backward as she warns him to stop. Kaname, injured but steady, attempts to weaken the incoming projectiles before they reach her. Power swells violently between them, and as the spell destabilizes, she braces herself while the energy threatens to explode. A violent surge erupts above the city walls as the unleashed spell shoots skyward, forcing the old magician to falter. Seeing no escape, Kaname admits they can no longer conceal the truth from him. With forced confidence, he claims they are undercover students on a secret mission for the kingdom. The magician hesitates, uncertain, while Kaname maintains his composure beside the stunned girl. To secure their safety, Kaname boldly declares she is his partner and lover, leaving her speechless. The elderly magician relents, acknowledging their explanation, while Kaname requests forgiveness for earlier disrespect. Impressed by Kaname's resolve, the old man promises silence and offers assistance for the kingdom if needed. The girl introduces herself as Milty, confirming she had heard of Kaname beforehand. Kaname recognizes her connection to his village and thanks her warmly for the support. Suddenly weakened from his injuries, Kaname collapses slightly, insisting he is fine as concern rises around him. Milty casts healing magic while Kaname activates a brief cure through his job change, stabilizing his injury. He explains he performed a temporary job change earlier, limiting his own ability for the rest of the day. Admitting the secret mission was a lie, Kaname says he acted quickly to protect her reputation. When she asks about payment, he awkwardly confesses he only wanted a better excuse. Firmly refusing money, Milty insists she will seek his strength instead, and Kaname agrees to cooperate. Milty agrees to cooperate, while Kaname asks her to investigate a separate matter and hints he will need her help with magic later. Before parting, he offers to replace her blood-stained clothes, attempting to ease the aftermath of the fight. She suddenly realizes her torn blouse and reacts in shock, embarrassed by the damage. Elsewhere that same day, officials discuss the earlier thunderous strike at another location. With no visible traces of destruction found, suspicion grows about the true source of the mysterious lightning. Observing the reports, a stern official concludes the lightning incident was highly unusual. Marcus staggered through the corridor, troubled by the class he supervised, while Sina noticed his unease. He recalled a delinquent, a prodigy, and nobles split between factions, fearing disorder from the very first day. Soon the entrance ceremony began at Norva's Seminary school, gathering rows of silent new students before the stage. Kaname stood among them, watching carefully as the Archbishop was formally welcomed to the platform. Balnack Remulgent declared expectations for students' future within the kingdom. From the podium, Balnack urged students to pursue excellence through discipline, mentioning lizard attacks and displaced villagers. He claimed faith alone sustained society in crisis. In the hall, Kaname heard that humans were fragile and gained strength through devotion. Solemnly, he described leadership as guiding others through hardship while awaiting their growth. Later, breakfast with classmates gave Kaname time to reflect on those expectations. During breakfast, Kaname claimed he was merely tired, hiding last night's secret battle. A classmate suddenly confronted him about being seen with someone unusual yesterday. Excitement spread as a girl was described as gentle and beautiful, drawing attention. Accusations escalated when witnesses mentioned lightning, a back alley, and her damaged clothing. Cornered by suspicion, Kaname weighed whether to silence the witness or invent an excuse. Before the Archbishop, Kaname bowed respectfully as questions arose about the recent thunderbolt. Calmly he explained that everything turned white and only a roaring sound reached him. Suspicion deepened when Balnack noted that light and sound together meant close proximity. An elder intervened, remarking that no traces remained and the inquiry had gone far enough. With formal blessings exchanged, the temple leaders departed, leaving Kaname unsettled. Tension lingered as Kaname and his classmates felt the weight of powerful figures visiting the school. Whispers spread that Archbishop Balnack had risen from humble origins, increasing Kaname's caution. Inside the classroom, Marcus attempted to begin a lesson on rival factions. Unexpectedly, Balnack entered, claiming he wished to encourage the scholarship students. Though class was about to start, Marcus allowed brief advice, placing the students under the Archbishop's watchful presence. Before the class, Balnack admitted he never graduated from the seminary and was once viewed as heretical. From the podium, he welcomed the scholarship students and declared that he expected far more from them. Moved by the attention, Schmidt expressed deep gratitude for receiving guidance from such a powerful church figure. Recognizing him, Balnack mentioned Schmidt's past confinement and spoke to him personally. Encouraged to devote himself to faith and self-improvement, Schmidt vowed to become someone worthy of pride. Standing before the Archbishop, Kaname Morimoto gave his name calmly when asked. Discussion shifted to his remote hometown, noted for lacking ties to church or shrine factions. Sharp eyes fixed on him as Balnack questioned his whereabouts during the thunderbolt. Carefully, Kaname explained he had walked near the outer wall and lost his way returning. Pressed further about a cafe invitation, he claimed he could not recall its name. Balnack dismissed concern over Kaname's meeting, then shifted attention toward the Thunderbolt investigation. Serious suspicion arose as he suggested the incident might have been caused by a magician. Across the capital, authorities believed no ordinary caster could unleash such a massive spell. Confidently, the Archbishop declared he would punish evil yet recruit the culprit, if worthy. After his departure, Kaname resolved to inform Milty about this dangerous development. Milty approached Kaname cheerfully and reminded him about beginning their magic theory lesson. After brief small talk, they decided to head toward her favorite cafe to continue privately. Inside the shop, Kaname sensed tension as an unexpected presence drew his attention. Balnack appeared once more, casually introducing himself and noting their repeated encounters that day. While Milty confirmed their previous visit together, the Archbishop calmly questioned their connection to the Thunderbolt. Milty analyzed the Thunderbolt calmly, suggesting it might have been caused by a hidden magician. Standing beside their table, Balnack pressed her to describe exactly what she witnessed. Instead of leaving, he ordered identical meals and insisted on sitting with them. Smiling confidently, the Archbishop formally introduced himself and requested to visit the cafe mentioned earlier. Alarm spread across Milty's face as Kaname struggled to remain composed under growing pressure. Unease filled Kaname as he worried about drawing attention despite previous warnings to remain unnoticed. Curiosity shifted toward the small creature in his arms, identified as a rare fairy rabbit. Suspicion deepened when Balnack stared closely, questioning Kaname's true identity. Suddenly, hooded figures surrounded them in a narrow passage, tightening the atmosphere. Recognizing the danger, Kaname shielded Milty and resolved to hide his abilities while protecting Chiaro. Watching the hawk circle above, Kaname realized he needed a quick distraction to avoid suspicion. Across the yard, Balnack drew his weapon calmly, confident in the strength of trained clergymen. Acting decisively, Kaname secretly advanced his abilities and commanded the bird without revealing himself. Feathers collided as the hawk struck its target, overpowering the opposing creature in seconds. From afar, Balnack observed the result and concluded that Kaname still lacked sufficient combat experience. Amid the clash, Kaname's summoned creatures overwhelmed Balnack and forced him onto the ground. Quickly regaining control, the Archbishop ordered ropes and had the fallen attackers restrained. With a serious expression, he apologized for exposing the students to unexpected danger. Relief followed, as Kaname credited the hawk's timely arrival for preventing further harm. Soon afterward, guards escorted the captured figures away while their identities remained unknown. After the guards departed, Balnack calmly announced he would follow them to the office and offered a blessing before leaving. As he walked away along the wall, Kaname stopped him and requested one final question. Studying him closely, Kaname suggested that the Archbishop might have intentionally acted as bait to draw enemies out. Amused, Balnack praised his reasoning and bid farewell, addressing him by name. Left behind, Kaname resolved to keep distance, while Milty sought answers about the magician investigation. Kaname writes to Kulnan, explaining that half a year has passed since arriving in the royal capital and assuring that he is managing well. He studies diligently at the academy, becoming accustomed to classes while recalling the uneasy first seminar and hoping to earn his diploma. Thoughts shift toward a certain teacher as he reflects on discussions about coursework and his growing awareness. Josephine Roflin introduces herself and declares control over management lessons. She questions students about essential elements every religion requires. With a stern look, Josephine dismisses the first answer and shifts attention, keeping firm control of the classroom discussion. After brief thought, Kaname states that funds matter most, earning approval for recognizing practical management realities. From another seat, a student explains that a village priest survived through community support, without requesting payment. Smiling slightly, Josephine clarifies that such support still counts as compensation for necessary expenses. Ultimately, she concludes that managing a cult requires money, though many students hesitated to admit it openly. With a calm tone, Josephine explains that without funds, temples fail and the number of people saved remains limited. Back before the class, she adds that many revenue methods exist and tells students not to feel discouraged. Confidently, she lists donations, ceremonial offerings, and individual contributions as common financial sources. Eagerly, Kaname suggests operating subsidiary businesses to maintain stability. Pleased, Josephine agrees and reveals the seminar itself functions as such a business. Firmly smiling, Josephine has the class repeat that religion and business are linked, leaving Kaname quietly reflecting. Soon battle class begins as Galawaz Diesel introduces himself and demands unwavering willpower from every student with commanding presence. He states serious trainees will become as strong as warrior priests. Without pause, the instructor demonstrates his strength by striking a solid block before everyone. Instantly, the impact shatters the stone. and Kaname stares in stunned disbelief. Kaname struggles to grasp the instructor's overwhelming strength, while a young girl notices he is new to the class. During the lesson, the teacher explains his powerful skill and prepares individual training plans for each student. Intense drills quickly exhaust everyone, leaving Kaname and several others collapsed on the ground. Afterward, the girl approaches confidently, sharing her experience while checking his condition. Abruptly, a sudden disturbance draws their attention and shifts the tense atmosphere. After a brief misunderstanding with classmates, Kaname returns to his dorm, reflecting on the tense exchange while avoiding further conflict. Later he writes a letter describing his studies and mentions learning about magic items from Milty. At the Magic Research Institute, he listens carefully as she explains that magic items contain stored power. Demonstrations follow, showing tools for lighting, combat, and various daily uses. Finally, she notes many ancient devices still function, making ruin excavation an active field of study. Kaname listens as Milty explains that modern craftsmen are scarce and present techniques remain far inferior to ancient methods. Considering solutions, she raises the idea of people changing jobs to blacksmith or artisan to reduce the gap. Caught off guard, Kaname admits he has never thought about those professions before. Recalling his rural hometown, he notes few toolmakers existed, and that job changes depend heavily on training. Milty concludes that crafting magic items requires proper job holders and mana from skilled magicians. Milty explains that magic begins with theory and notes magicians cannot insert mana into every tool. Displaying a book, she adds that casting demands understanding phenomena, imagination, proper affinity, and sufficient mana. She outlines ability gaps and elemental compatibility, stressing that job changes alone never ensure mastery, clarifying it functions like a skill system. She proposes a short break. Over tea, Kaname mentions the church's expedition against rock lizards and quietly considers joining. During tea, Kaname learns the church has heavily promoted the upcoming subjugation expedition and seems unconcerned about joining. Later, he writes to Coleman, mentioning increasing monster activity and advising caution in their hometown. Reports suggest at least one powerful saint from the church's job holders will participate in the mission. Considering the church's influence, Kaname suspects even high officials may attend to display authority far away. The Grand Cathedral of Clodia Kingdom stands as preparations quietly advance. Inside his office, a nobleman learns the church will remain on expedition that day and refuses to attend the planned ceremony. Advisors inform him the Duke expects the first prince as guest, increasing political pressure to comply. Frustrated, he realizes the subjugation at Melzi village is already decided and suspects hidden motives from the palace. Meanwhile, the church requests the Holy Knights, presenting caution while seeking public trust. Left alone, the nobleman criticizes their tactics and questions how to respond. Reviewing reports, the nobleman confirms rock lizards occupy the village, and learns their petrifying gaze is their only notable threat. He notes a healer candidate at the seminary, while recognizing that only the Holy Knights are available near the capital. The next morning, Kaname greets classmates as lingering tension with Schmidt remains unresolved. Soon, the battle instructor arrives with an announcement, drawing everyone's attention. He declares he will lead the Mel's village subjugation, temporarily suspending lessons. Miss Mayuska Demerle is chosen as the healer for the expedition, though concerns emerge about her readiness. Students react with loud excitement, showing strong admiration and support for her selection. Kaname listens as the instructor explains her lack of battle experience and requests combat students to accompany her. Her role is clarified as psychological support, avoiding direct frontline danger. Volunteers step forward decisively, and Kaname joins the expedition. Kaname keeps a low profile while worrying about Mayuska. Only upper-class students may join the expedition. The instructor states the Archbishop will not attend and holds full authority over the mission. Encouragement is given to scholarly students. Kaname chooses to participate despite earlier restraint. Both students are officially accepted into the expedition team. Tension rises when a classmate confronts Kaname directly, unable to ignore him anymore. Kaname maintains a polite attitude toward Schmidt, hiding tension to ensure teamwork during the expedition. As the wagon nears the royal capital, two members stay awake on guard while others rest. An abrupt warning signals an enemy attack, breaking the night's quiet. A young swordswoman quickly stands, draws her blade, and leads the group to face the approaching threat. Kaname heard that the coming subjugation expedition would place her at the rear rather than the battlefield's front. Within the hall, he learned Mayuska had been chosen as the expedition's emblem, a role demanding responsibility and steady resolve. Gradually, he understood that such troublesome positions were granted only to those deeply trusted. Their quiet exchange halted when another member suddenly appeared, noticing their whispering. Afterward, Kaname redirected attention toward rock lizards, recalling their durable scales used for defensive equipment. Discussion shifted toward monsters with petrifying magic, and Kaname clarified he meant their threat level, not the ability itself. He then asked Mayuska whether she could use anti-stone magic, carefully considering the danger of petrification. She explained that basilisk attacks once struck her village, forcing her to heal those turned to stone. However, Mayuska admitted she could not cast resist stone, leaving Kaname thoughtful. Soon after, she mentioned a friend studying magic, and offered to arrange guidance on learning resist stone. Kaname insisted on joining the visit to the magic department girl, pressing Cornelio to introduce him despite clear reluctance. Confrontation followed when a teacher exposed Cornelio's secret sales of strange amulets within the school grounds. Authority intervened firmly, rejecting excuses and confiscating the questionable goods. While discipline unfolded behind them, Kaname calmly left the building with Mayuska, heading toward the courtyard. Outside, spotting a lone young woman, Kaname hurried ahead, only to realize too late he had rushed off alone. In the courtyard, a young woman confronted Kaname, asking directly if he was Kaname Morimoto. Frustration stirred elsewhere as someone questioned why beautiful girls always seemed drawn to him. Soon after, Kaname and Mayuska arrived at a vast library. Meeting the refined magic scholar they had sought, the scholar welcomed them warmly, expressing surprise at meeting Mayuska instead of the person expected. Surrounded by towering shelves, discussion turned toward magic studies, as the host invited them to sit and talk. Inside the library, they discussed whether uncommon sanctuary records existed, noting many religious texts filled the shelves. The scholar agreed to teach resist stone, allowing them to read freely, though books could not leave the room. Standing before a board, she explained that simple anti-stone magic would not counter petrification. Instead, understanding the opposing structure of petrification power was necessary to form proper resistance. As confusion grew, she paused the lesson briefly, checking whether Kaname and Mayuska truly understood her explanation. Tea and pastries were served as Milty received praise for her deep knowledge of magical theory. Attention shifted to Mayuska's research, revealing her growing interest in the underlying principles that shape spells. Doubt surfaced when she admitted little experience with such studies and uncertainty about beginning her thesis. Encouragement followed, suggesting Kaname's assistance could guide her academic direction. With graduation approaching, urgency settled over them as they recognized preparation could no longer be delayed. During tea, Milty casually asked about Kaname's cult affiliation, leaving him visibly unsettled. He explained that many cults were beginning recruitment, prompting brief discussion before they set the matter aside. Soon, Milty redirected everyone back to the resist stone lesson, and Kaname agreed to cooperate fully. To demonstrate defensive magic, she designated Kaname as the experiment's subject. As evening approached, the session concluded, and Mayuska departed for church duties while gratitude marked the end of their visit. After parting from Mayuska, Kaname walked beside Milty as she confirmed his participation in the expedition. He thanked her for the unexpected day, assuring her she would remain safe at the rear guard. Unease surfaced when Milty admitted she had been relying on him more than intended. Suddenly, Kolne appeared before them, startled by their closeness. Tension rose as Kolne confronted the scene, while Milty calmly warned Kaname not to misunderstand the situation. Kolne greeted Milty warmly, while Kaname questioned her sudden appearance with visible confusion. She explained her arrival was tied to an adventurer mission and mentioned sending letters about magic lessons. Surprise followed when it became clear those letters had never reached their destination. Moments later, a composed man named Armit appeared, identifying Kaname as the person Kolne sought. With sharp words and bold claims, Armit challenged Kaname openly, escalating tension in front of both women. With confident composure, Armit stepped forward and asserted that Kolne would find greater happiness standing beside him. Maintaining a gentle smile, she declined his proposal, offering thanks while clearly refusing to accompany him. Irritation surfaced across his face as he tried to object, yet the tense atmosphere left little room for argument. From behind, several adventurers advanced together, their collective presence shifting attention across the courtyard. Calmly addressing Kaname, Kolne revealed that Armit commanded the group she had worked with for months. Behind Armit, his companions introduced themselves one by one, presenting Karnat, Myson, Nork, and Graham. Attention returned to Kolne as Graham mentioned a mission he wanted her to join, while she explained her earlier departure caused the lost letters. Serious expressions followed when Armit revealed a request from their master to support Kaname's upcoming subjugation of rock lizards near Mi's village. Details clarified that the church initiated the expedition, with their master appointed as its commander and healers dispatched accordingly. Facing Kolne directly, Graham formally asked for her strength to assist their mission for a limited time. Kaname announced his involvement in the expedition, leaving Kulni stunned while Milty watched the exchange carefully. After regaining composure, Kulnin agreed to stay under their protection longer, as Kaname lightly welcomed her presence. Attention turned to the mission structure, explaining their master would handle the church's request through the Adventurers Guild. They clarified that the guild functioned as a loose association rather than a unified company. Driven by conviction, Armit declared that Kulnin was meant to stand beside him in battle. Armit's companions apologized for his behavior, explaining he often lost composure regarding Kulnin. Kulnin cheerfully parted from Kaname and Milty, promising a longer talk next time. After the reunion settled, Milty suddenly remembered something Kaname meant to say earlier. Seizing the moment, Kaname proposed dinner after the expedition to discuss recent matters together. Days later, the subjugation expedition began as a leader addressed the crowd about shrinking human territory. Before departure, the church praised Mayuska as a divine healer who would safeguard Melzi village despite expected sacrifices. Kaname stood among the gathered fighters while citizens watched, promised a hero's welcome upon success. With commanding voice, the leader invoked blessings upon everyone joining the campaign. Crowds filled the square as wagons rolled forward, hopeful prayers mixing with anxious farewells. Far away in ruined Mel's village, shattered buildings, and a fallen doll revealed the devastation awaiting them. Monstrous rock lizards crawled through Mel's village ruins, tearing debris apart hungrily. For 5 steady days, the caravan advanced from the capital toward Mel's village without meeting threats. Guards surrounded the wagons, while Kaname walked beside them, unaware of approaching danger. Evening brought rest beneath the trees as companions gathered around a small fire. Calm expressions and quiet relief marked a brief moment of peace before chaos arrived. Rain poured suddenly when monsters charged from the darkness. Temple warriors formed ranks. Within the storm, healers treated the wounded tirelessly. Fatigue spread as the clash continued. Beneath a tent, Kaname delivered supplies despite exhaustion, resolved to protect everyone. Within the rain-soaked camp, a healer prepared to treat the wounded with medicine later. Though exhausted, the priestess insisted on continuing her work without relying entirely on others. Under the tent's edge, Kaname adjusted his hood and looked toward the battlefield. Anxiety surfaced as he wondered about the condition of those still fighting outside. Beyond the camp, monsters charged despite a sonic attack unleashed against them. The beam struck, yet the advancing creatures barely slowed. Warriors identified them as stone lizards, far sturdier than expected. Prolonged combat risked, allowing some to slip past the defenses. Even villagers stepped forward as giant rock lizards pushed closer through relentless rain. Rain fell steadily as Kulna regained composure, strengthened by the presence of her allies. Support from the group restored her focus before the next assault. Across the front line, determination unified the defenders as they prepared to demonstrate their strength. Hesitation faded while weapons were firmly gripped. A powerful blow crushed a charging stone lizard, sending its body crashing onto the wet ground. The enemy's advance briefly stalled. Watching from afar, Kaname evaluated the overwhelming display of force and questioned its consequences. Near the trees, he spotted a familiar figure standing silently in the rain. Despite warnings, Kaname decided to inspect the battlefield himself, promising to return soon. He stepped into the rain, leaving the camp behind. Through the forest, he tracked a suspicious figure moving between trees. Unease grew as he realized the person was not searching for safety. Suddenly confronted, Kaname learned the forest held no ordinary presence. Shock crossed his face when the stranger challenged him directly. Ahead, a fallen stone lizard lay on the ground, while the man revealed a rare magic orb. The situation shifted from pursuit to immediate threat. Without hesitation, the stranger activated the orb and launched a powerful attack toward Kaname. The fallen stone lizard suddenly moved again, its massive body lunging despite heavy wounds. Pain twisted his expression while he realized the monster was still alive. Fear replaced confidence as the situation spiraled beyond control. From the side, allies rushed in through the rain, blades driving into hardened scales. Coordinated strikes forced the beast backward before it could finish its prey. A masked fighter deployed a powerful poison, weakening the creature as it collapsed heavily onto the ground. Confusion flickered among enemies witnessing the sudden reversal. With decisive resolve, warriors unleashed a luminous strike that shattered the remaining lizards, ending the threat. A powerful strike crashed against the stone lizard's skull, metal scraping across rigid scales. The creature staggered yet remained standing. Rain poured heavily as the beast roared and tried to rise again. Allies tightened formation, creating space for Kulna to advance safely. Taking that chance, Kulna sprinted straight toward the monster. Determination hardened her expression as she prepared her blade. A rapid cutting technique ripped through the creature's defenses, breaking its hardened exterior. The attack forced it down onto the flooded ground. Without hesitation, she delivered a final blow that ended the stone lizard beneath the falling rain. Though the stone lizard collapsed, its eye glowed with a petrifying force. The threat lingered as its magic gaze targeted Kulna. For a brief moment, confusion crossed her face as she braced for the spell. Tension tightened across the battlefield. Suddenly protective light enveloped the fighters. A resistance spell cast before the battle shielded them from turning to stone. Relief steadied Kulna as she regained full control of her movement. Gratitude strengthened her resolve to finish the fight. Channeling radiant power into her blade, she unleashed a luminous strike and urged everyone forward. A blade pierced the stone lizard's head, yet the monster roared and thrashed wildly. Shock spread as it refused to die. Kaname stepped forward, admitting the strike was not enough. Strain showed on his face as he realized he had exhausted his time. Assessing the situation, he noted the creature could no longer use its petrifying gaze. Urgency filled his voice as he insisted they finish it quickly. Determined to exploit its blind spot, Kaname advanced toward the weakened beast. Suddenly, an ally shoved him aside. A massive tail swept through the space where he had stood moments earlier. Rain fell as the wounded stone lizard lay before them. Caution replaced relief when they realized crushing its eye was not enough. Kaname warned that the beast could still sense through hearing and smell. A quick plan formed to divide roles and finish it properly. Schmidt stepped forward boldly, declaring himself the creature's opponent. His shout drew the monster's attention away from Kaname. Using that distraction, Kaname moved behind the lizard and drove his blade into its vulnerable spot. Steel pierced deep as the beast roared. The monster finally collapsed, and both fighters dropped to the ground, exhausted but alive. Rain continued, as both sat on the soaked ground, catching their breath. Kaname admitted he would have died without the shove that saved him. Schmidt responded awkwardly, half serious and half teasing. Despite the tone, tension lingered between them after the fight. Kaname stated plainly that he had protected Schmidt and ended the battle. His blunt honesty left the other man speechless and uneasy. After a pause, Kaname acknowledged the debt he owed. Without that earlier rescue, victory would have been impossible. Composure returning, he questioned why Schmidt had chased the stone lizard alone. The wounded stone lizard remained on the ground as Schmidt rebuked Kaname for acting recklessly. He warned that such monsters could harm travelers or nearby villages. Composure returning, Schmidt explained that abandoning formation to chase one creature would destabilize the expedition and affect the church's mission. Kaname absorbed the criticism quietly. After reflecting, Kaname unexpectedly suggested forming an alliance. The proposal shifted the tension between them. He then revealed his personal ambition within the religious order, prompting Schmidt to admit he also pursued his own objective. Both considered how future conflicts between their factions might unfold. Kaname calmly explained that he did not seek friendship, only cooperation. He stressed that his proposal was practical and necessary for their shared situation. Extending his hand, he outlined a strategy to achieve both of their personal ambitions. Publicly, they would behave like ordinary classmates within the same institution. After a brief hesitation, Schmidt accepted the arrangement. His agreement carried caution rather than trust. With a faint smirk, Schmidt declared he would follow the plan solely to advance his own objective. Mutual benefit replaced hostility. Together, they walked back through the forest as the rain finally stopped. Back at camp, Miyusuka rushed toward Kaname with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed with relief. The tension from the battle finally broke as she realized he was safe. Kaname thanked her gently for worrying while Schmidt stood nearby in silence. Concern shifted into quiet reassurance as they confirmed nothing terrible had happened. A report arrived from the battlefield, while both young men exchanged knowing smiles. Outwardly calm, they concealed the depth of their recent struggle. Under clearing skies, the fallen rock lizards lay scattered across the field. Kulna stood firm among them, confirming their defeat. Cheers rose from the group as victory settled in and relief spread through the expedition. Rainwater pooled across the battlefield as the order to retreat spread, signaling the exhausted fighters could finally withdraw safely. The town square filled with food stalls and banners as residents celebrated the expedition's return. Crowds moved between vendors while laughter spread across the street. A cheerful girl thanked the returning members for their hard work during the journey. Her expression showed relief as preparations continued around her. Kaname, the black-haired young man, gently held a rabbit while greeting a companion. The group acknowledged the safe return with visible ease. Elsewhere, townspeople raised mugs beside a large roasted meal to honor the success. Kaname watched, surprised by the festival atmosphere. Later, the group discussed parade participation, assigned to backstage duties. Kaname quietly considered who should represent them publicly. After the expedition, attention centered on the Archbishop as official leader, leaving the adventurers' contributions quietly overlooked, despite their significant efforts. A girl revealed a medal granted by the church to honor her achievements, acknowledging the expedition's success while recognizing lingering dissatisfaction. The instructor who presented it explained that the medal could secure assistance from any church when necessary, giving it practical value. Kaname observed subtle jealousy within the group, yet the tension eased as festival scents filled the street. Soon they shared food at a stall, enjoying the celebration together as earlier concerns faded. While sharing food, the group agreed the village meals would feel plain after tasting the city's rich dishes. Kaname then asked about future plans. She explained that since others were staying longer, she decided to continue adventuring with them for a while. Living in the capital seemed manageable after recognition from the church. Another companion offered to introduce good restaurants if she remained in town. Gratitude eased the earlier tension. Nearby, a child noticed the rabbit and reacted with amazement. Kaname watched the encounter carefully. The rabbit's name was shared, and it responded proudly, drawing warm smiles from everyone present. A small girl approached the group, introducing herself as Carol while standing beside the rabbit. She mentioned her parents were absent. Soon, a man arrived and called out to her, relieved to find her safe. The child happily recognized him as family. The companions watched as the man gently checked on her, ensuring she had not wandered too far alone. Recognition followed when he realized they were adventurers who had returned safely from the expedition. The mood turned friendly. He introduced himself as Rommel White, explaining he had maintained a sword before their departure, linking their past encounter to the present. The girl explained she had come with her family for the parade and was not returning to the village. Her father stood proudly beside her. He revealed they had decided to remain in the capital, believing it was safer after recent dangers. Though attached to their village, uncertainty about future threats influenced their choice. Kanam and his companions listened carefully as the father admitted even his daughter no longer wished to go back. The decision felt final. Introducing his son Fame, he described the boy as young yet skilled in blacksmithing. Attention shifted toward the quiet youth. Kaname sensed clear potential in Fame, recognizing the presence of a blacksmith's talent within him. Carol clung to the rabbit as her family prepared to leave, reluctant to end the brief encounter. Kaname assured her he would bring Kyaro to visit next time, promising she would have more time together. Smiling brightly, she accepted the promise and waved goodbye, while the rabbit responded cheerfully. After they departed, attention returned to Fame. Kaname sensed he possessed strong aptitude for advancement and suggested visiting the blacksmith's atelier later. Watching the young craftsman carefully, Kaname concluded that Fame's future job would likely be unique, forming a quiet idea about his potential path. Trumpets sounded across the capital as crowds gathered along the main street. Kaname and his companions hurried toward the parade route, while banners fluttered overhead. Confetti drifted through the air as a robed girl watched with calm anticipation. The procession advanced between packed buildings. On the steps before the church, warriors knelt while the Archbishop addressed them formally. Recognition focused on the expedition's official leader. Armored members stood in formation as praise echoed across the plaza, crediting their courage during the fierce battle. Before the cathedral towers, the Archbishop proclaimed that faith in Orphus had achieved victory, sealing the celebration with solemn authority. Before the gathered crowd, the Archbishop addressed the healer, acknowledging her crucial role in securing the expedition's success. He credited her healing skills for preventing casualties, ensuring every member returned safely from the dangerous mission. Kaname watched quietly from nearby. Further praise followed as her insight and countermeasures against enemy magic were recognized publicly, highlighting her intelligence and preparation. With formal gratitude, the Archbishop declared that others should look up to her dedication and service to her comrades. Amid rising cheers and falling confetti, the church officially granted her the title of Saintess, sealing the celebration with thunderous applause. Confetti drifted as the newly named Saintess stood beside the Archbishop and a warrior, accepting the crowd's admiration with composed resolve. Away from the stage, her companions discussed her sudden rise in popularity, surprised by how widely her name had spread. One friend expressed gratitude, recalling guidance that helped counter dangerous magic during the expedition. Kaname listened quietly nearby. The healer reacted modestly, brushing aside praise while questioning the sudden attention directed toward her. She then admitted surviving a stone curse during battle thanks to that countermeasure, leaving the others startled by the revelation. With steady resolve, the healer clarified that the success was not hers alone, adding that something she learned there ended up protecting Kuchan. From the chaos of the fierce battle, memories revealed how her actions shielded everyone from the rock lizard's deadly magic. Smiles spread among her companions as they recognized her importance and proposed that Milty should also stand in the parade. Suddenly, a young man arrived and called out to Kulnan, interrupting the light-hearted mood. Facing her directly, he requested a private conversation, causing the atmosphere to grow noticeably more serious. Kulnan declined the invitation, explaining she could not discuss the matter publicly and needed to leave. The young man accepted as teammates began assembling nearby. After brief farewells, the group separated, and Kanam watched her depart with a thoughtful expression. Later, inside a room overlooking the street, a cloaked figure asked for everyone's opinion regarding a developing issue. A letter was presented, its contents suggesting a private discussion that required secrecy and caution. They learned the message had been delivered earlier by a shopkeeper, through an unknown messenger, raising quiet suspicion among the team. Concern spread through the room as they discussed the request, noting it involved a secret matter within the capital and carried clear danger across the table. A cloaked member described the situation as deeply troubling, while another sat quietly in thought. Analysis followed, pointing out that powerful factions in the capital constantly competed, making any hidden issue potentially volatile. Skepticism surfaced among the group, yet some suggested they should at least hear the messenger out before deciding. Despite tension, confidence remained as they agreed to prepare countermeasures, determined to respond firmly if the meeting turned hostile. After brief discussion, the group agreed to hear the messenger's story first before deciding whether to accept the request. Word arrived that the man from earlier was waiting downstairs, and permission was given to bring him up despite the late hour. Precautions were taken as one member quietly advised activating defensive skills in advance, in case trouble followed. Moments later, a hooded figure stepped through the doorway, the wooden door creaking as it slowly opened. Tension settled over the room while the leader watched the entrance carefully, preparing to confront whatever message the visitor carried. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows, greeting the adventurers while concealed intentions unsettled the silent room. A hooded man met Aramido's party and introduced himself under an alias, hiding his identity while requesting a private discussion. From his robe, he presented a sealed bottle, explaining it was a rare medicine brought from the royal capital after years of research. According to him, the substance allowed users to hear divine guidance, though the scholar examined it carefully with visible doubt. He clarified that the drug induced hallucinations and euphoria, with effects varying depending on the individual's tolerance. Furthermore, the man warned that the medicine was dangerously addictive and closely resembled narcotics. Aramido listened as the hooded man explained that the drug remained legal, its sale permitted despite growing concern. Suspicion deepened when the leader pressed him for his true objective, refusing to be misled by vague claims. Reports revealed the substance was spreading rapidly, though the man insisted he opposed its trade and sought another solution. He disclosed plans to push for its prohibition, admitting the process would take time and resistance. Finally, he requested the party investigate the source, revealing he had been attacked while pursuing his own inquiry. The hooded man warned that exposure would endanger him, fearing the assailant would discover his identity and silence him permanently. A party member questioned why he avoided palace guards, yet distrust toward officials and fear of betrayal filled the room. Suspicion grew that the attacker might serve the royal government, suggesting powerful forces stood behind the spreading drug. Unable to describe the thug clearly, the man admitted darkness concealed his features during the encounter. Aramido concluded the attacker possessed a specialized profession, recalling how skilled allies had been effortlessly slain. The hooded man offered a reward for their involvement, presenting a new expedition as compensation for the danger ahead. He revealed it concerned the subjugation of a rock lizard, acknowledging the party's past achievements and capabilities. After hearing him out, Aramido decided to consult his companions, postponing their final answer until the next day. With quiet confidence, the man accepted the delay and departed, hinting at ties to the royal capital. Once gone, the group chose not to follow, instead noticing an amulet bearing the symbol of Norva. The group examined the amulet and identified it as a symbol of Norva, guardian deity of the royal capital. Connections formed as they recalled Norva's doctrine, which focused on protecting the city through divine authority and strict order. Considering the man's words and behavior, they reasoned that officials from the capital could be involved behind the scenes. Deliberation followed, and one member concluded the request seemed manageable, since it required only investigating the medicine's origin. With the promise of a substantial reward and no immediate legal risk, the party gradually agreed to accept the task. Aramido admitted concern about the thug's profession, recognizing the danger posed by an unknown and specialized opponent. Suddenly, the mood shifted when a teammate reminded them that someone within their own group also possessed a unique job. Encouraged by this realization, the young woman stepped forward with determination, ready to contribute her abilities to the mission. While plans for a strategy meeting began forming, her attention quickly drifted toward the thought of having dinner first. Outside, evening settled over the town as the team left the table, debating whether her earlier snack had truly been enough. At the seminary, the instructor announced 2 important updates and reminded the students that graduation required submitting a formal thesis. Kaname listened quietly from his seat. He further explained that this short-term program demanded visible achievement, urging everyone to demonstrate practical results before completing their studies. Hearing that the theme was unrestricted, Kaname grew uneasy, aware that he would soon need to decide on a suitable topic. The instructor reassured the class that groundbreaking theories were unnecessary, only something appropriate as a graduation submission. Meanwhile, Kaname briefly imagined proposing a cooking guide, then quickly realized such an idea would never be accepted. The instructor announced that the ban on sectarian solicitation would be lifted, allowing students to visit religious facilities directly. Kane learned this was a rare chance to observe different sects and gather information firsthand for his graduation requirement. After class, he told his friends he intended to join a temple school, knowing the experience would be demanding. As they discussed options beneath a tree, Kaname decided to postpone his final choice until after visiting several temples. Later, when asked which sect interested him most, he casually mentioned the gods of wind or darkness, surprising the others. Kaname's friends debated which deity suited him, dismissing fire and water while suggesting light or earth might fit better. Seated beneath a tree, they continued weighing options, with some doubting wind and others insisting darkness matched him more closely. After listening quietly, Kaname finally decided he would visit the temple of Cusus to observe its teachings firsthand. His announcement surprised the group, prompting curious reactions and brief confusion among his companions. Soon after, a classmate revealed she also planned to visit Cusus and invited Kaname to accompany her on their next day off. Kaname hesitated before accepting her invitation, surprised by the sudden proposal, yet unable to refuse directly. They arrived at the Grand Temple complex, its vast courtyard and towering walls reflecting the influence of Cusus. While walking together, Kaname admitted he was not particularly devout, explaining that others around him were more openly religious. She responded calmly, expressing that personal choice mattered more than conforming to expectations or traditions imposed by others. Hearing her reasoning, Kaname reflected that shaping one's entire life around religion alone could become restrictive if taken too far. Kaname felt flustered after misunderstanding her words, while she calmly clarified that she considered him intelligent despite his blunt remark. Inside the temple reception hall, they greeted an attendant and introduced themselves as visitors from the theological seminary. Upon hearing they were seminary students, the attendant reacted with surprise when they requested permission to tour the temple. She hurried away to confirm their request, asking them to wait as she disappeared behind the counter. Left alone, Kaname quietly wondered whether Cusus attracted many seminary students, sensing the temple's notable reputation. The attendant politely guided Kaname and Celine to another room, leaving him slightly uneasy about the unexpected formality. As they waited, Kaname sensed someone watching him, and turned instinctively toward the vast interior hall. Inside the main sanctuary, worshippers knelt before an enormous statue, its scale dominating the chamber and commanding silence. Standing before the veiled figure, Kaname felt a strange familiarity, as if the presence stirred a distant memory. When Celine called his name, he snapped back to awareness, apologizing softly while the lingering sensation remained in his mind. While waiting in a private room, Kaname learned that a guide would arrive soon, and Celine noticed he had seemed distracted earlier. Recalling the sanctuary, he admitted the statue left a strong impression and stirred a strange sense of nostalgia within him. Although he could not explain the feeling clearly, he described it as familiar, despite never visiting the temple before. Celine gently wondered whether the experience had awakened some hidden faith, mentioning that others had teased him about it. Kaname grew uneasy at the suggestion, dismissing the idea internally while thinking about how talkative his classmate could be. A sudden rumbling shook the waiting room, and Kaname realized the noise was coming from beneath the floor. Before he could react, the ground bulged upward and a gloved hand forced its way through the boards, startling both of them. As the intruder emerged from below, Kaname shouted in confusion while his companion stood frozen, gripping her weapon in alarm. Kaname stood inside the parlor as a female adventurer confronted him and the seated noblewoman. He revealed their intention to visit the temple of Cusus. Calmly he clarified that the adventurer was someone he knew. The noblewoman observed her carefully, weighing trust against caution. Doubt surfaced over the adventurer's unusual appearance. Kaname sensed the tension rising as suspicion filled the room. Fear of being discovered shifted the discussion toward escape. A quick decision was made to use the window. The adventurer accepted the plan and prepared to leave. Kaname requested a proper explanation later. After reaching the temple, Kaname asked Serene to keep their visit confidential. The noblewoman considered the cost, aware that involvement with the temple would not be cheap. Soon, a young priest named Taylor McDaniel greeted them and introduced himself as their guide. He led them forward without delay. Inside, grand halls opened before them as Taylor explained that Cusus was the god of art. Worshippers trained there to gain specialized abilities. Various visitors passed through daily, including soldiers, adventurers, and entertainers. Taylor indicated different individuals while describing their combat and artistic roles. Among the visitors were pregnant, women seeking blessings. Kaname looked surprised as he learned they also came for support. Within the sacred hall, a pregnant woman knelt in prayer. The guide explained that they sought blessings for their unborn children, hoping they would receive suitable jobs. Kaname reflected on the temple's purpose and sensed it differed from other divine domains. He quietly questioned whether such matters extended beyond Cusus's authority. Suddenly, the temple's chief appeared before them. Taylor reacted with surprise as the dignified man introduced himself as Prometheus Galadi. Kaname expressed respect upon realizing the importance of the visitor. Meanwhile, the deputy head seemed absent, adding uncertainty to the meeting. Prometheus offered to explain the temple's deeper matters personally. Kaname and his companion agreed, prepared to hear what he wished to reveal. Kaname crossed the vast main temple with the noblewoman, watching worshippers kneel while others moved quietly between the tall pillars. Attention turned to the rare explanation they received from the chief himself. She remarked on his bold questions, and Kaname felt uneasy about it. Thoughts of the meeting remained vivid as she described the chief's enthusiasm. Kaname admitted he had only briefly considered building a temple in a remote area. A faint smile formed as he concluded the discussion was worthwhile. She continued observing him in silence. Her teasing remark about a darker god unsettled him, leaving Kaname questioning his expression. The noblewoman smiled softly and admitted she had been teasing. She remarked that Kaname's earlier expression had seemed unexpectedly cool. Kaname stood quietly, unsure how to respond, while she observed him with growing interest. Her impression of him continued to change. Their conversation drew attention from nearby men, who began staring openly. The noblewoman accepted the situation lightly, while Kaname reacted with confusion. One man stepped closer and made an unnecessary remark about her attire. Kaname moved subtly, placing himself between them, as she calmly thanked the stranger and walked ahead. He signaled that it was time to leave. The men watched in disappointment as Kaname and the noblewoman departed together. Kaname hurried to the temple staff and reported that his companion had been surrounded by troublesome men. He asked for immediate assistance. Doubt crossed his mind about relying solely on temple members. He realized the situation outside might already be escalating. Spotting the deputy chief nearby, Kaname felt a brief sense of relief. Meanwhile, Serene stood facing the men, enduring their presence alone. The deputy chief stepped forward with a stern expression and confronted the men directly. His warning carried clear authority within the temple grounds. Intimidated by his presence, the men quickly apologized. Order returned as they withdrew under his sharp gaze. After the disturbance ended, the deputy chief received their gratitude and warned them to remain cautious. The troublesome men withdrew, leaving the temple grounds under watchful order. Kaname agreed to depart as Serene suggested returning. They left the deputy chief behind and walked away from the temple together. Outside, the town's buildings rose closely along narrow streets. Kaname questioned why someone had secretly exited that place. Later, a small group gathered indoors to discuss a new request. Suspicion of being followed surfaced as they reviewed details about a man involved. Doubt spread regarding trust within the room. Kaname sensed he was once again the least favored presence. Serene stated her trust in Kaname, easing tension in the room. Attention shifted toward him as doubts quietly faded. The group agreed it would be quicker if the explanation came directly to him. Kaname listened while others prepared to clarify the situation. Confidentiality was stressed before any decision could be made. He accepted the condition without hesitation. The request involved tracing the source of illegal narcotics spreading through the area. Kaname understood the seriousness of the task. Their search had already reached wholesalers, brokers, and smugglers, revealing an organized chain behind the trade. During the meeting, the group described how they followed a wholesaler at night. Their presence was exposed when an armed escort suddenly appeared. The man who handled the surveillance admitted he was the one tailing the suspect. Kaname questioned whether proper caution had been taken. The escort had not been visible at first, but he charged without warning. Realizing the danger, they regrouped and withdrew quickly. Kaname asked whether the attacker possessed a defined job. Confirmation suggested the opponent was trained and capable. Outnumbered, the escort still drew his sword and attacked 6 people directly, showing confidence and unusual combat ability. The female adventurer explained that she realized the situation was serious and doubted she could win alone. The opponent's movements grew heavier and faster during the clash. Kaname listened carefully as she described how the man forced his way through their formation. Others acknowledged the danger she had faced. Their leader stated that supporting Kulna was only natural in that situation. Responsibility and teamwork shaped their decision. Believing the enemy was at a disadvantage, they pursued him. The chase continued, despite uncertainty. After briefly losing sight of the target, she searched anxiously. Determination returned once she located his trail again. Kaname assured the group that he would help if possible. The female adventurer admitted she had wandered through the temple before appearing unexpectedly. With the discussion concluded for the day, Kaname prepared to leave. Others insisted on accompanying them, unwilling to let the pair depart alone. Outside under the streetlights, he asked Coleman about the escort's job. She believed it matched a swordsman or knight. Kaname considered a different possibility and mentioned the role of a magic knight. The suggestion caught her attention. He explained that such warriors could enhance themselves temporarily, raising their abilities beyond ordinary combat classes. Kaname proposed that exploration magic allowed the escort to detect their careful surveillance. He believed such abilities explained how their movements were exposed. Coleman quickly connected the idea to a magic knight she had seen at the temple of Cusus. Suspicion began to settle firmly. A heavy pause followed as Kaname lowered his gaze. Both silently reached the same conclusion. Elsewhere, the magic knight walked through a dim corridor. He was the deputy chief of the temple of Cusus. Kaname stands inside a quiet chamber, gazing through the open gate toward the distant castle rising beyond the city. Doubt lingers as he observes the unfamiliar land before him. Outside, 2 individuals question whether he remains the same person as before. Uncertainty surrounds their plan to test him once more. Later, a young woman approaches Kaname, believing he can help confirm the deputy chief's identity. Resolve builds as he agrees to assist her investigation. She requests cooperation, trusting they share responsibility in this matter. Accepting the situation, Kaname prepares himself for what lies ahead. Before parting, she asks if he will choose the temple of Cusus. The weight of that choice settles heavily on him. Kaname hears her warning about the temple's high risk. After weighing the danger, he decides the issue should be settled quickly even if authorities must be involved. By the iron fence, she considers his judgment. Gradually, she accepts his reasoning and calms herself. With renewed composure, she explains that adventurers can enter that temple freely, making it convenient for her movements as well. Surprise crosses Kaname's face as he realizes how easily she can access the place. At another location, a separate figure notices Eddie's condition and senses a new complication emerging. Kaname meets a senior who praises his unusual thinking and asks whether he has chosen a graduation thesis theme. The unexpected question leaves him briefly unsettled. Resting his hand against his chin, he reflects in silence. Uncertainty lingers as he admits he has not settled on a clear direction. The senior presses further, requesting his honest thoughts. Gradually, Kaname begins forming an idea worth discussing. He proposes examining the concept of one's own job within society. The suggestion catches the senior's attention immediately. Kaname expands on his view, imagining an earlier era shaped by inherent job holders and structured roles that define strength and status. He gestures toward towering shelves filled with magic books and tools, suggesting such abundance may overwhelm ordinary people without defined roles. He refers to historical writings and heroic myths where even nameless soldiers possessed distinct jobs that shape their identities and abilities. Thoughtfully, Kaname questions whether the ratio of job holders has changed over time, proposing that people might be born with inherent roles. Listening carefully, his senior admits the idea had never crossed his mind, but finds the perspective genuinely intriguing. Although unable to confirm the theory immediately, the senior concludes that Kaname's hypothesis holds enough depth and originality to deserve serious research. Kaname expresses gratitude for the evaluation. His senior then reveals he has an additional account that could further support the emerging theory. With a serious expression, Kaname reflects on the idea, considering that his hypothesis might gain strength if historical evidence aligns with it. Describing it as speculation, the senior wonders whether the reduced number of jobs today stems from human decline or another unknown factor. An unexpected claim follows, suggesting ancient civilizations once possessed the capability to change jobs freely. Offering a calm clarification, the senior admits it is only a passing thought, prompting Kaname to quietly contemplate the broader consequences. Kaname faces his senior, as he is asked whether he intends to turn his idea about jobs into a formal graduation thesis. Caught slightly off guard, he hesitates. His senior assures him that support will be given if he chooses to pursue the topic seriously. At that moment, another professor enters the room and notices the discussion still continuing between them. The senior quickly explains they are talking about Kaname's possible thesis, clarifying that it has not yet been officially decided. Listening quietly, the newly arrived professor closes his eyes in thought, calmly assessing the situation before offering any response. The newly arrived professor apologizes for interrupting, admitting he was distracted by his own thoughts before noticing the discussion. Turning to Kaname, he acknowledges the hypothesis as interesting, yet pauses, carefully weighing its academic viability. After brief consideration, he explains that such a topic could prove difficult for a formal seminar graduation thesis. Concerns arise about gathering sufficient evidence and completing the research within the limited months remaining before graduation. Finally, he suggests that interviewing a church saint connected to job changes may be necessary, hinting at a crucial lead for Kaname's research. Kaname clarifies that he does not plan to submit the job theory as his graduation thesis, and explains he only sought Eddie's opinion. Marcus responds with visible relief, expressing interest in Eddie's future thesis and offering guidance whenever needed. After Marcus leaves, Eddie checks whether Kaname truly feels comfortable abandoning the idea, while Kaname quietly wonders about Marcus's sudden shift in attitude. Eddie reassures him that he has no intention of taking another's concept, and Kaname requests that the discussion remain private for now. Later that evening, the academy stands in silence, marking the close of a conversation that may influence Kaname's path ahead. Kaname explains that the deputy chief once helped him, and he wishes to show his gratitude directly. At the temple counter, a woman recognizes him from before while a hooded attendant calmly states the issue was temple business. Soon after, the deputy chief steps forward, drawing attention as Kaname is presented before him. With steady posture, Kaname introduces himself as a student from Norvis Theological Seminary. Raising his hand to his chest, he offers sincere thanks for the assistance given when his companion was troubled by other visitors. After noticing Kaname's subtle signal, the deputy chief assures him the earlier matter was simply part of the temple's duty, and nothing more. Still uneasy, Kaname insists that returning home without properly acknowledging the help would feel unnatural, despite those words. The deputy chief accepts his sincerity, allowing him to visit again as Kaname admits he wishes to observe the temple more closely. With a faint smile, the deputy chief advises caution, explaining that the temple's structure is intentionally confusing for visitors. Later, as Kaname leaves, a companion waits nearby and quietly asks how the meeting inside the temple went. Kaname learns that the deputy chief of the Temple of Cusus is a renowned magic knight, a fact that deepens the weight of recent events. Among his companions, speculation rises that if such a figure were removed, the temple's power would inevitably decline. Elsewhere, investigators finalize their report about the drug's source while noting the connection to the deputy chief remains unconfirmed. Suddenly, tension erupts as someone approaches the door, prompting urgent warnings from inside. Before anyone can react, a blade pierces through Kaname's body from behind, leaving him stunned as blood spills and shocked voices call his name. Kaname collapses against the wall after being stabbed, blood spreading across his clothes as a cold voice mocks the place as a den of rats. The deputy chief steps inside, recognizing Kaname as the unarmed seminar student and warning him not to die before questioning is finished. Image 3 pain overwhelms Kaname, while nearby figures clash violently, steel meeting steel as the floor darkens beneath him. Struggling to breathe, he clutches his wound and realizes he may die without achieving anything he set out to accomplish. With fading strength, Kaname entrusts everything to Kulne, extending blood-stained hands as a strange power begins to respond. Kaname lies unconscious while a healer channels energy into his chest, attempting to suppress the dark corruption spreading through his weakened body. Meanwhile, a black-haired warrior attacks a long-haired swordsman, but he withstands her assault and counters as blood spills across the floor. Gradually, his movements become sluggish, alarming him, while she prepares another strike before an ally steps in to stop her. Soon after, Kaname rises despite his injuries and delivers a decisive blow that crashes heavily against the swordsman. Finally, the enemy collapses. Kaname requests more medicine, and the others recognize that the battle has ended. A healer presses a quick remedy against Kaname's corrupted wound, but the dark substance continues spreading across his chest. Nearby, a man admits he can no longer prolong Kaname's life, while two women stand tense, realizing time is running out. Suddenly, the black-haired girl turns and bolts from the room, ignoring the shout that calls her name. Through dim corridors, she sprints with unwavering focus, her steps echoing as urgency drives her forward. Finally, she arrives before a towering cathedral, staring up at its massive doors as she resolves to seek a desperate solution. At the cathedral gate, guards block her path, yet she insists on seeing the healer, warning that Kaname may die. They refuse entry without an appointment, crossing their spears as she struggles to contain her panic. Desperation drives her to reveal a sacred pendant, causing one guard to hesitate in sudden recognition. Soon, a guard goes to inform the scientist while she pleads through the bars, stressing that Kaname's life is in danger. Inside a quiet room, Scientist Muska turns from her shelf, surprised, sensing the urgency in the unexpected message. As Muska steps outside, attendants protest, warning that a saint should not act rashly or appear before anyone without restraint. Calm determination settles over her face despite their concern, showing she has already made her decision. Recognizing Kulnan from Kaname's stories, Muska declares her intent to save him regardless of objections. Urgency sharpens her voice as she asks to be taken to Kaname's location immediately. Though others attempt to stop her again, Muska moves forward with resolve, leaving them no choice but to follow. Kulnan lifts Muska in her arms and rushes from the cathedral, ignoring the shocked stares behind her as urgency drives her forward. Inside the quiet room, Kaname lies awake, breathing weakly, while recalling the sudden attack that nearly ended his life. Fragments of memory surface as he remembers Deputy Chief Berzet appearing and striking him without warning. Confusion crosses his face when he notices his wounds have already been treated and his strength slowly returning. At his bedside, Kulnan and Muska rest in exhaustion, and Kaname realizes they came to save him. Kaname sits up in bed as Muska notices he has awakened, relief, softening her tense expression. Glancing at his bandaged torso, he confirms the wound has healed, while Kulna remains asleep beside him. Recognition follows when he sees Muska present. Understanding she came to help and expressing quiet gratitude soon after, a companion enters the room, apologizing for the trouble and thanking Kaname for his efforts. Although Kaname offers thanks in return, the visitor insists responsibility lies with them, easing the mood as recovery begins. A guild member confirms Kaname's condition has stabilized and offers to escort Muska back to the church. Kaname sits upright, thanking Muska sincerely, while another companion prepares to take responsibility for her return. With a calm smile, Kaname assures them he can manage and asks that Kulni be allowed to continue resting. After brief farewells, Muska and the others leave, promising to see him again once he fully recovers. Soon the room grows quiet, and Kulnan wakes beside the bed, meeting Kaname's gaze as morning light settles between them. Sitting upright in bed, Kaname mentions that Muska has already departed, and admits he failed to thank her properly for saving his life. After a brief pause, he recognizes that Kulnan was the one who rushed to bring Muska when his condition turned critical. With a gentle expression, he apologizes for causing her distress, and sincerely expresses gratitude for her efforts. Unable to hide her emotions, Kulna lowers her head and confesses how frightened she was of losing him. Quietly, Kaname reaches out and draws her into an embrace, allowing the lingering anxiety to dissolve between them. While Kaname and Kulna sit close together, a bespectacled man suddenly enters, apologizing lightly as he interrupts their private moment. Recognizing the visitor as Berzet, Kaname stiffens, and the man calmly asks Kulna to keep watch over the restrained prisoner. Concern arises when he explains the sleeping gas will soon wear off, though Kulna assures him the captive remains chained and unconscious. After noting the prisoner's strong resistance to drugs, the man decides to prepare another dose and requests supervision until he returns. Left in the room, Kaname studies his recovering body in silence, as Kulna stands nearby ready for whatever happens next. Kaname asks to observe Berzet's transfer, and the bespectacled man informs him it will happen that night. Though permission is granted, he is warned that Berzet remains dangerous, despite being chained, as he is a magic knight. Walking through the corridor, Kaname confirms he has personal reasons for wanting to meet the prisoner. Memories surface of the moment Berzet attacked, and Kaname reflects on the man's former role as a village protector. Clenching his hand, Kaname considers a new possibility, realizing his ability may now strip away the power tied to an inherited job. Standing before Kulne, Kaname explains that his ability poses a direct threat to those bound to specific professions, and decides to revert Berzet's job to Magic Knight. In the holding room, the chained Berzet stirs awake, glaring at his young watchers with restrained irritation. Approaching calmly, Kaname addresses the former Deputy Chief, who remarks on his survival and studies him with guarded interest. Maintaining composure, Kaname requests permission to ask a question while observing the prisoner's condition closely. With steady eyes, he notes Berzet's reputation as an excellent temple manager, preparing to test the limits of his newfound power. Bound to a chair, Berzet claims his actions were for the sake of a divine crisis and questions Kaname's intentions. Listening carefully, Kaname hears him criticize the other great temples, arguing that unfair treatment and power struggles demand wealth to enforce authority. Unconvinced, Kaname presses for clarification, seeking to understand what he truly means by injustice. Before the exchange deepens, the bespectacled man returns and apologizes for the delay, drawing their attention. After Kaname agrees to proceed, the man readies a fresh dose of sleeping gas, warning them to step back as Berzet exhales faint mist. Extending his hand toward the restrained man, Kaname activates his ability while the others watch, and the doctor remarks that the prisoner should remain asleep for a full day. Dark fragments flicker around Berzet as the power takes effect, leaving Kaname wondering what he truly meant by unfair treatment of the crisis. Outside, a prison carriage waits in the courtyard, prepared to transfer the captive under heavy guard. Inside the wagon, Berzet suddenly tightens his fists, chains clanging loudly as he tests their strength. Raising his head behind the bars, he opens his eyes with a cold glare, showing that his will remains unbroken. Kaname listens as two men decide to report their evidence to the doll temple, believing its authority can manage the situation. Concern grows over church politics and Berzet's reassignment. While seated, he evaluates Cusus temple's involvement and agrees doll seems reasonable. Careful thought guides his measured conclusion. Doubt emerges about possible corruption within doll's leadership and rumors of churches seeking dominance. Still, the group recognizes Kaname's sharp judgment. A case is opened, revealing neatly arranged magic orbs inside. The orbs contain recorded proof of an illegal drug transaction, secured through significant risk. Discussion shifts toward making copies of the recordings, requiring assistance from a skilled magician. Attention turns to Kaname and his connection to the Magic Research Institute. Pressure mounts as others suggest obtaining help through his contacts. Unease crosses Kaname's face while expectations settle on his decision. After brief consideration, he requests time to think, unwilling to act hastily. The group watches closely, waiting for his response. Agreement follows, yet suspicion lingers as someone asks about the remaining 3 members involved. Explanation comes carefully. They were summoned by the garrison, and details cannot yet be disclosed. Concern deepens when Berzet's whereabouts are questioned. Responsibility falls to Kaname as the others continue verifying the collected evidence. Confidence is placed in him while unresolved details remain under review. Afterward, he stands before the imposing Magic Research Institute, preparing himself for the request he must make. Within the shelves of books and tools, a female magician explains that magic orbs are expensive and limited, yet she is willing to assist as far as her authority allows. Serious determination settles over Kaname as he asks Milty for a favor, acknowledging he cannot solve everything alone. Before concluding, he mentions that someone intends to meet her, despite knowing she may not welcome that encounter. Milty cheerfully agrees to help, unaware of who has summoned her, while Kaname watches quietly beside her. Outside, the old mage appears and apologizes for calling her abruptly, though disappointment lingers in her expression. Sudden tension rises as Milty steps forward protectively, sensing danger from the elder's presence. Without warning, the old mage unleashes a gale orb, sending a violent burst of wind toward them. Before the attack can land, Kaname intervenes and nullifies the spell instantly, leaving the old mage stunned as his magic vanishes. Confidence fills Kaname as he realizes he can disable the magic by altering his opponent's job before activation. Facing the old mage, he demonstrates the result calmly, proving the spell no longer affects him. Low laughter rumbles from the elder, whose expression shifts into dark amusement as he studies Kaname closely. Sudden excitement overtakes the old man, praising Kaname as someone worthy of inheriting the kingdom's secret order. Composure returns to Kaname while the elder admits he only wanted confirmation. Amused admiration follows, impressed that the magic vanished before activation. Kaname assures the old mage that the institute will provide magic orbs if he makes the request. Careful negotiation softens the elder's stance. Agreement follows as Kaname explains the case is confidential and tied to those who quietly support the kingdom. Cooperation is secured through mutual understanding. The next day arrives, and Kaname prepares to return to school, carrying his belongings and regaining normal routine. Upon arrival, classmates notice his absence and express relief that he is safe before graduation approaches. Sudden frustration greets him as one student grabs him angrily, upset that he disappeared without explanation, having worried during his absence. Inside the dormitory, classmates gather around Kaname, relieved to see him safe. Their concern fills the room as he thanks them calmly. Surprise spreads when he learns how seriously they worried, nearly requesting an official search during his absence. Gently freeing himself from their grip, Kaname decides to visit his teacher, promising to return soon. Upstairs, he meets his instructor, who expresses quiet relief upon confirming his safety. Seated within a room lined with books, Kaname explains his situation, and his teacher listens carefully before acknowledging the circumstances. Kaname stands before his teacher, attempting to justify his recent actions. Suspicion lingers as the instructor questions his decisions and reminds him of the danger involved, calm but firm. The teacher admits the explanation is difficult to accept and warns against offering shallow excuses. Discipline follows as Kaname is ordered to write a letter of reflection, though relief appears when his safety is acknowledged. Later, the teacher reveals he visited the Cusus temple and heard complaints about unfair treatment surrounding their god. Tension settles over the room as the teacher quietly processes the implications, leaving Kaname aware that deeper issues remain unresolved. Kaname notices his teacher distracted and calls for his attention. The instructor admits he was thinking about what might satisfy the priest, yet remains uncertain. Trying to lighten the mood, Kaname suggests turning the issue into a subject for his graduation thesis, believing it could be meaningful. Serious caution follows as the teacher explains that theses are archived in the seminary library and accessible to others after evaluation. Leaning forward, he warns that once published, the work may reach unknown readers and carry unintended consequences. Concern settles over Kaname as he realizes careless words could become dangerous, leaving him quietly reflecting on the risk. Silence hangs as Kaname confronts his teacher, suggesting he knows a hidden truth about the world and asking for honesty. Firm resolve guides Kaname as he refuses to demand answers directly, instead presenting two dangerous subjects he wishes to explore. Across the library table, he explains his goal is not merely academic, but a way to avoid stepping unknowingly towards something greater. Measured caution shapes the teacher's reply, advising that focusing on the present is safer than pursuing the uncertain past. Acceptance follows as Kaname thanks him and prepares to leave, while his teacher quietly expresses anticipation for the thesis he will produce. Kaname leaves the study, believing the matter is simpler than it appears, while his teacher watches him go in silence. Left alone among the books, the instructor reflects quietly, hoping Kaname will avoid repeating his own mistakes. The next day, Kaname walks through the academy halls when Celine calls out to him with concern. Confusion arises as she mentions a girl from beneath the floor, leaving Kaname startled by the strange wording. Embarrassment follows as he dismisses the misunderstanding, and Celine urges him toward the entrance hall where someone waits urgently. Kaname agrees to return later after finishing his errand, noticing Celine's serious expression as she watches him leave. In the entrance hall, a girl named Kilney stands waiting quietly, her posture tense within the wide, echoing space. Without hesitation, she hands Kaname a document, her eyes revealing worry as he asks what has happened. Reading the notice, he learns that Deputy Chief Berzet Novarak has been dismissed and expelled from the Cusus temple. Shock crosses his face as Kilnan admits she expected this outcome, then informs him that another decision has been made, deepening the crisis. Berzet escapes during transport, injuring guards and fleeing on horseback, while Kaname realizes his job alteration caused unforeseen consequences. Kaname stood in the quiet library, avoiding the woman across the table. Sunlight passed through the tall window behind her. She approached with steady steps and studied his lowered gaze. Concern showed on her face while he kept his composure. The topic shifted toward the Cusus temple and his decision. From her sleeve, she revealed a letter bearing the temple's seal. Tension formed in Kaname's expression. News about Deputy Chief Berzet's dismissal deepened the atmosphere. Her eyes sharpened as she questioned his knowledge. Unease lingered between them. Kaname stayed calm but thoughtful. Turning toward the window, she awaited the truth. Responsibility weighed on him. Kaname finally admitted the attack involved him directly. Serene questioned. Kaname's claim that the incident was his fault. Doubt lingered in her eyes while he lowered his gaze. The situation felt heavier than before. Apology came from Kaname as he refused to reveal everything. Concern pushed her to ask about another possible attack. Silence followed her final question. Explanation arrived calmly as he clarified the wound was accidental. Circumstance placed him in the path of danger. Intention had not been directed at him. Caution marked her response, despite partial relief. Gratitude ended the exchange. Departure soon followed. Purpose guided Kaname toward the Cusus temple. Resolve strengthened as he approached the vast structure. A young priest welcomed Kaname inside the temple office. Surprise showed on his face as he noticed the unexpected visit. Papers rested in his arms while another worker stood behind. Kaname mentioned the dismissed deputy chief. Apology came quickly from the priest, who admitted the person in charge was absent. Slight embarrassment colored his expression. Sudden movement filled the hallway as staff hurried past the door. Absence of both the deputy chief and head priest left duties unfinished. Confusion lingered around the office. Concern surfaced when the priest explained the remaining leader handled overwhelming tasks alone. Kaname listened quietly, recognizing the strain placed on the temple. Both sat across from each other and continued calmly. Politeness guided Kaname as the discussion proceeded despite the busy atmosphere. The young priest handed Kaname a stack of service documents. Short staff made his help valuable. Hope brightened the tense office. Sudden interruption caught them off guard. Papers nearly slipped as both turned toward the doorway. Surprise spread across their faces. An older priest entered and immediately took control of the room. Authority silenced the confusion. Responsibility shifted as he assumed oversight. Recognition followed when he addressed Kaname directly. Formal introduction steadied the atmosphere. Attention focused entirely on the newcomer. Seriousness replaced earlier chaos as the chief acknowledged Kaname's intention to serve Cusus. Evaluation began quietly under his measured gaze. The temple had informed Kaname about a report naming him as Burzet's victim. Suspicion surfaced as he asked whether Kaname knew about hidden crimes. Concern shaped the warning that supporters of Burzet might resent him. Calmly, Kaname denied any prior knowledge. Tension remained between them. Seeking certainty, the chief requested complete honesty for safety's sake. Determination steadied Kaname as he promised to explain everything clearly. Verification followed once the account ended. Direct confirmation was requested. Kaname affirmed the truth without hesitation. Ambition then guided his final statement about building a temple in a remote region. Consideration crossed the chief's face as he listened. Kaname expressed regret over the deputy chief's fall and requested support for building a new temple. Reflection followed as the former leader's ambition was recalled. The chief acknowledged those contributions, but noted internal weakening after the incident. Consideration shaped his reminder about Kaname's plan for a remote region. Uncertainty surfaced as he questioned whether Kaname would still choose Cusus. Warning came that constructing a distant temple might disrupt his goals. Resolve strengthened Kaname's answer. Commitment to remain with the people of this temple defined his purpose. Recognition softened the chief's expression. Blessing concluded their meeting beneath the silent statue of god Cusus. Mutual respect settled between them as Kaname prepared for the path ahead. 2 months later, a formal ceremony marked the students' graduation. An instructor stood before the class and announced their placements with calm authority. Several names were assigned to different temples and churches. Attention shifted across the room as futures were decided. One by one, Kaname and Serene were designated for Cusus Temple. Quiet satisfaction settled over them as they accepted their path. Celebration followed among classmates, including one student repeating the year. Laughter and applause eased the tension of parting. Memories of the past year lingered as everyone prepared to leave. Growth, hardship, and shared effort shaped their final farewell. The instructor addressed the class with visible pride and relief. Students waved toward him, grateful for his guidance. Reflection filled the room as graduation settled. Invitation arose from the students to celebrate together. Surprise softened the teacher's usual composure. Emotion surfaced as he realized their sincerity. Evening brought everyone around shared tables beneath warm lights. Glasses were raised in celebration of achievements and perseverance. Laughter replaced earlier tension. Conversation flowed freely as food and drink were enjoyed. Kaname joined the gathering, tasting wine carefully while listening to others. Later, a classmate approached Kaname with a serious expression. Curiosity lingered as the celebration continued around them. A classmate abruptly questioned Kaname's sobriety, unsettling the table. Suspicion and irritation surfaced as attention focused on him. Accusations escalated when another student shouted angrily. Protest and denial collided, shaking the cheerful mood. Attempts to restore order followed as others spoke over the noise. Frustration lingered, yet the argument slowly lost intensity. Lighter conversation gradually returned, shifting toward jokes and future reunions. Teasing remarks eased the earlier tension. Eventually, the instructor joined Kaname at the table. Calm reflection replaced conflict, while the celebration continued quietly. Kaname and his instructor shared a quiet table during the celebration. Gratitude passed between them as they reflected on the demanding year. Teasing remarks followed about Kaname's constant troubles. Weariness showed in his posture, while the instructor observed calmly. Drink in hand, the teacher dismissed his words lightly. Kaname struggled to accept the explanation, sensing hidden meaning. Revelation emerged as the instructor admitted he once served as deputy chief of the Cusus Temple. Surprise registered on Kaname's face as the past resurfaced. Calmly, the teacher clarified that he had stepped away after extensive research in earlier years. Silence settled between them as understanding deepened. Kaname quietly considered the teacher's past emotion while staring at the glass before him. Doubt surfaced as he questioned what that history truly meant. Across the cluttered table, reassurance came gently from the instructor. Confidence in Kaname's future replaced uncertainty. Confusion lingered briefly in his expression. Gratitude followed as Kaname accepted the encouragement. Warm resolve settled in his heart while the teacher offered support in times of emergency. Suddenly, commotion broke out nearby when a classmate nearly collapsed. Concern spread as others rushed to steady him. Discovery of strong alcohol explained the chaos. Realization dawned that excessive drinking caused the scene, shifting attention away from earlier reflection. A strong bottle was revealed at the table, explaining the earlier chaos. The teacher calmly drank despite warnings, while others watched with concern. Outside under the night sky, friends supported the unsteady classmate along the street. Responsibility shifted as they escorted him home carefully. During the walk, tension surfaced between two students. A strained promise and unresolved feelings emerged beneath the dim lights. Discussion turned serious as they acknowledged future distance and strict evaluation from higher authorities. Consequences weighed on their choices. Despite lingering conflict, faint humor returned. As directions were debated, the group continued through the dark city, maintaining fragile companionship. A letter arrived at the residence, delivered with quiet formality. The long-haired teacher accepted it calmly, sensing its importance before breaking the seal. Later, he read the message by the tall windows and spoke privately with a visitor. Certain matters remained too sensitive for writing, requiring direct explanation. Gratitude filled his thoughts as he reflected on the sender's safe graduation from the seminary. Satisfaction showed in his composed expression. Meanwhile, Kaname stepped into the temple courtyard at dawn. Determination marked the beginning of his service at the Cusus temple. Kaname started his morning at Cusus temple beneath a superior's cold scrutiny. The vast halls felt distant as he accepted his assignment without protest. The senior priest regarded him with composed approval, emphasizing the importance of reception duties. Unease stirred within Kaname, though he maintained a respectful posture. A firm reminder followed, stressing that even unordained staff could handle such work. Responsibility settled heavily across his shoulders. Reference to the deputy chief increased the pressure surrounding him. Lowering his eyes, Kaname understood expectations were absolute. Positioned at the entrance desk, he faced arriving visitors and began performing his role diligently. Several visitors approached the reception desk with different purposes. Kaname listened carefully and guided each of them according to temple procedures. Throughout the day, he answered questions, directed guests, and handled small concerns efficiently. Maya later greeted him warmly after the busy hours ended. She acknowledged the successful turnout and recognized his steady support. Kaname reflected quietly on his previous experience in hospitality work. Maya observed his organizational skill and noted his growing capability. Her assessment suggested that greater responsibility might await him. With a playful confidence, she reminded him that reception required more than courtesy, leaving Kaname considering his future within the temple. Kaname reflected on the temple hierarchy, recognizing the clear divide between ordained priests and unordained staff like himself. The structure defined authority and limited advancement. Maya discussed the influence of senior receptionists and internal politics. Awareness grew that understanding reception work required more than surface knowledge. Rumors about the deputy chief's supporters circulated quietly. Kaname sensed that alliances shaped decisions within the temple. Determined to remain useful, he expressed willingness to assist wherever needed. Maya responded with visible confidence in his potential. Later, while delivering food during a break, Kaname received brief acknowledgement for his effort, reinforcing his steady place within the temple. During break, Kaname joined Maya and Cameron at their table. The three newcomers gathered quietly while lingering concerns surfaced about earlier events. Cameron revealed that ritual equipment had been damaged, causing delays. Temporary measures allowed the ceremony to proceed, though the issue remained unresolved. Attention turned toward repairing the sacred tools properly. Maya considered swift action before further complications developed. Drawing from prior knowledge, Kaname suggested seeking an artisan skilled in crafting magical instruments. His insight shifted the conversation. Cameron noted that such specialists were extremely rare, emphasizing the importance of finding one quickly. Discussion shifted to villagers who possessed rare skills, despite lacking formal titles. Kaname listened as they considered how talent sometimes existed beyond official positions. Curiosity led him to question the reasoning behind that view. The idea quickly gained agreement among the group. Attention turned toward Celine's decision to join Cusus Temple. Her optimistic outlook reflected belief in its artistic and cultural mission. While they spoke, a small box of sweets was opened on the table. conversation drifted toward afternoon responsibilities. Later Kaname left the room for night duty and briefly greeted Deacon Taylor before continuing his assigned work. As evening approached, Kaname prepared for his first solo night patrol and exchanged a few final words with a fellow priest. Curiosity surfaced when the other priest mentioned strange talk spreading through the temple halls. Unaware of the details, Kaname listened attentively. Despite receiving proper training, uncertainty lingered in his thoughts. Hesitation marked the priest's expression before he chose to reveal more. Whispers centered on the inner corridor near the temple chief's office. Unease quietly surrounded that restricted section of the building. Lantern in hand, Kaname stepped into the dim passageways and began patrolling the silent temple alone. While patrolling the inner corridor, Kaname noticed faint light seeping from the chief's office, a place that should have been empty at night. Cautiously peering inside, he suddenly saw a hooded priestess rush toward him from the darkness. Her sudden movement, breaking his composure. Panic surged through him before the tension abruptly dissolved, revealing the scene to be nothing more than a staged prank. Serene appeared amused, already aware of the tradition meant to test newcomers' nerves within the temple. Embarrassment settled over Kaname as the others laughed, satisfied with the success of their harmless initiation ritual. After the prank, Kaname left the room in low spirits while his colleague wished him luck on patrol. Determination slowly replaced his lingering embarrassment. Holding a lantern, he reminded himself that he was mature enough to dismiss superstition, despite strange remarks mentioned earlier. Imagination briefly conjured thoughts of rare forbidden jobs and ghost-like figures, yet he firmly rejected those ideas as irrational speculation. Approaching the corridor near the chief's office, he convinced himself that rumors about unusual phenomena could not be true. Suddenly, a faint light leaked from beneath the office door, forcing Kaname to reconsider his certainty. Steadying his breath, Kaname grasped the emergency magic tool and pushed the office door open, puzzled by the silence inside. Beyond the desk, the temple chief lay slumped over paperwork, unmoving, alarmed. Kaname rushed forward and checked his condition. Moments later, the chief stirred and admitted he had merely fallen asleep while working. Relief replaced the tension that had gripped the room. Embarrassment crossed the chief's face as he apologized for the scene. Kaname reassured him, noting that everyone understood his heavy workload. Before leaving, Kaname respectfully urged the chief to rest properly, concerned that excessive strain would damage his health. Seated across from Kaname, the chief admitted he needed to care for his health more carefully and expressed quiet gratitude for the concern shown. After a brief pause, Kaname respectfully asked about the temple's leadership structure, choosing his words with caution. He suggested that appointing a deputy chief or head priest might ease the chief's workload. The chief replied that a candidate already existed. However, that individual was currently out of the country, leaving the deputy position temporarily vacant. Uncertainty surrounded the timing of their return. The chief reflected that naming a replacement too soon could invite criticism, especially so soon after a recent incident. He explained that the matter extended beyond Cusus Temple and had already been discussed during a broader conference among temple leaders. Realizing the topic was drifting into sensitive territory, he steered the conversation away from politics, preferring not to dwell on complicated disputes. Kaname listened calmly, admitting he neither favored nor opposed such matters, though he intended to understand them eventually. Few priests, the chief noted, engaged in these discussions. Reflecting on recent shifts, the chief mentioned how certain temples gained influence after Brzett appeared, altering established balances. He concluded that Brzett's presence as deputy chief had elevated their standing, though his influence also unsettled others. Beyond Cusus Temple, neighboring institutions had begun widening their reach, including Dal Temple, whose friendly stance did not erase underlying competition. Reflecting on recent turmoil, Kaname realized the incident may have arrived at the worst possible moment, giving rivals a chance to weaken their influence. Memories of Brzett's authority surfaced, reminding them how firmly he once maintained order and deterred outside interference. Across the wider church, multiple factions maneuvered for advantage, while the temple faction struggled to remain the unifying force among shrine, land deity, and myth groups. Meeting Kaname's gaze, the chief admitted his frustration that Cusus Temple currently possessed too little power to assert itself confidently. The chief confessed his limits in leadership and faith, believing the crisis might have been avoided under someone more capable. Though reluctant to involve a newcomer, he listened as Kaname carefully requested permission to present an idea. With steady resolve, Kaname revealed his rare ability to change a person's job, proposing it could transform Cusus Temple's current situation. Inside a formal chamber, Kaname faced a stern official who questioned his claim about serving as a job conductor. Maintaining composure, he admitted possessing the rare power to change people's occupations, drawing the man's serious attention. Doubt lingered while the official assessed him carefully, acknowledging that such talent could greatly benefit the temple if proven true. To support his words, Kaname set a card upon the table, explaining that proof required someone to undergo job changing. Before continuing, he revealed the ability also applied to himself, prompting visible surprise and urging the official to keep this power confidential. Kaname activated his power, and a crystal formed in his hand with sharp light. The official turned pale as the status plate revealed a new class. Shock settled over the room while the man struggled to accept what he witnessed. He carefully studied Kaname, realizing the ability was genuine. The crystal rested on a tray as the official reconsidered every possibility. Doubt remained, yet no clear trick could explain the transformation. He hesitated, unsure whether further explanation was necessary. Meanwhile, the official admitted that changing others' jobs alone carried great significance. Leaning forward thoughtfully, the man demanded clarity about future consequences. Kaname faced him calmly as deeper discussion about the power began. Kaname revealed that before entering the seminary, he ran a remote shop offering job changes to anyone who sought new paths. The official understood this meant expanding access widely, challenging systems that limited such power through wealth and strict requirements. With steady resolve, Kaname stated he would accept donations and allow installments, ensuring opportunity remained practical yet inclusive. Attention shifted to political tensions as rival groups monitored Cusus and feared shifts in influence. Comparisons among doll, galleon, and feline exposed fragile balance, suggesting Kaname's ability could disrupt existing authority structures. Discussion turned to Anelip, whose predictable stance could help them deliver their message. While Gracias and Nomad remained cautious but not openly aggressive, Kaname questioned whether those factions would truly remain passive, recognizing that any move toward alliance would mark a serious step forward. The official emphasized that securing more than one temple was essential, as broader support would strengthen their position. Concerns arose about the church, which would not ignore expanding job changing, and attention shifted toward the powerful saints. Silhouettes of the saints appeared as symbols of faith, burdened by expectations and constant public scrutiny. The official explained that one duty of the saints involved overseeing job changes, placing them at the center of faith and authority. He warned that their burdens were immense, and revealing such power would expose Kaname to similar scrutiny and relentless pressure. Standing firm, Kaname stated he only intended to help those seeking change, though he understood the diplomatic consequences tied to his actions. With measured confidence, he expressed trust in the official's judgment while admitting his inexperience within the temple. Leaning back thoughtfully, the official absorbed Kaname's resolve and quietly considered the risks ahead. Seated in his office, the official quietly organized documents, while Kaname waited across the desk, sensing that new arrangements were about to be decided. After careful thought, the official stated they must determine Kaname's position within a newly formed department to manage the emerging responsibilities. Later outside, Kaname admitted he had revealed his ability, though uncertainty lingered about how events would unfold. A cheerful companion dismissed his worries and insisted they celebrate his first payment, despite his hesitation. Over a simple meal, conversation turned to future plans, including the bold idea of establishing an independent path if opposition continued. While eating, Kaname believed the proposal could move forward, since each temple operated independently, giving room for negotiation and internal approval. However, he considered the risk that rival factions might sabotage the new venture if they felt threatened by shifting influence. Maintaining caution, Kaname emphasized that avoiding unnecessary enemies remained their primary objective, despite potential gains. His companion warned that increased recognition could distance them, suggesting fame might change their simple meals together. Accepting the possibility, Kaname noted that church oversight might limit exposure temporarily, though such restraint would likely last only a short time. During dinner, Kaname estimated church supervision might last 2 months, while his companion worried that fame could change their ordinary moments together. Suddenly, 2 intoxicated men entered loudly and demanded service, startling the room and drawing uneasy attention. The men approached nearby women and pressured them to join their table, ignoring clear discomfort and resistance. A calm stranger intervened, positioning himself between them, and stating other seats were available, causing Kaname to sense familiarity. Without hesitation, the stranger struck decisively and ordered them to leave, ending the disturbance with controlled force. The confrontation escalated as one thug warned the stranger to stay out of it, while the blond man restrained another attacker and prepared to counter. Taunts followed, but the stranger struck first, landing a solid blow that forced his opponent backward and shifted the momentum. Before tensions spread further, Kaname's companion intervened decisively, delivering a powerful kick that dropped one aggressor to the floor. Silence replaced chaos as bystanders realized the disturbance had ended, and gratitude emerged from those who had been targeted. Afterward, apologies were exchanged, praise acknowledged their actions, and Kaname quietly commended his companion's swift response. After the fight, Kaname admitted he regretted hesitating earlier, while his companion calmly noted she had witnessed similar trouble many times before. She added that the stranger likely would have managed alone against a single opponent, though facing two made the situation unfair. The blond man approached their table respectfully and expressed sincere gratitude for their timely assistance. Introducing himself as Michael Parandina, he praised their handling of the conflict, while Kaname's companion brushed off concerns about the uneven odds. Gathering courage, Michael declared his desire to grow stronger and formally asked Kaname for guidance. Michael admitted his request was difficult, explaining he possessed skills and had participated in services at the Cusus temple without special training. When asked which aristocrat he served, confusion arose as Kaname clarified he was simply an adventurer and did not belong to any noble household. Surprised, Michael apologized and remarked that most job holders usually worked under aristocrats. While Kaname's companion mentioned court service did not suit her, Michael then revealed he served Prince Aizen, the fourth prince of the Kingdom of Claudia, drawing clear surprise from Kaname. He added that the prince valued talent over family status, though many nobles still looked down on him. With firm resolve, Michael clenched his sword and stated that growing stronger was necessary to properly support Prince Aizen. Turning toward Kaname's companion, he requested a single match to measure how his abilities compared against a true job holder. Calm acceptance followed as she agreed to the duel, stepping outside to settle the matter without hesitation. Moments later, the clash concluded swiftly, and Michael lay defeated, overwhelmed by the clear gap in skill. After ensuring he would recover soon, Kaname quietly concluded that the fourth prince's knight possessed sincerity and potential, despite his present weakness. Kaname considered announcing the temple's new business carefully, aware that rumors about false miracles could damage Cusus if mishandled. Realizing a demonstration would be necessary, he discussed practical steps while his companion reacted with growing interest. Excitement followed as they imagined the impact of revealing job changing publicly within the city. Far away, a carriage arrived at the gates, and a composed woman stepped down, anticipating her meeting with Kaname. Kaname stood at the temple counter as a woman expressed gratitude after offering her song to the goddess. Priests arranged a special time for the ritual. Calm returned to the hall while Kaname and his colleague prepared to rest. Footsteps echoed across the floor as someone approached from behind. A tall woman named Mylene appeared before them. She observed Kaname closely and formally introduced herself as the newly appointed senior priest of the temple. Mylene explained she would be away from the main sanctuary for a while, and entrusted responsibilities to Kaname. Her composed demeanor signaled authority. After departing, silence lingered. Kaname watched her leave, realizing the temple's order had quietly shifted. Kaname turned slightly as his colleague teased him about staring too openly at women. The remark caught him off guard, leaving him unsure how to respond. Embarrassment spread across his face while his colleague pressed further, warning him to hide his thoughts better. Kaname struggled to maintain composure under the scrutiny. The teasing intensified until she flustered herself, realizing she had said too much. Kaname observed her reaction, growing more curious about Mylene's true character. Later, he sat alone in a classroom, reviewing materials in silence. Other trainees listened quietly as the lesson continued. Several men glanced toward him with visible tension. Kaname remained calm, aware that attention within the temple was steadily increasing. While seated in the classroom, Kaname sensed hostility from a nearby trainee and kept his expression neutral despite the uneasy atmosphere surrounding him. Firm footsteps echoed as Mylene entered, drawing every gaze toward her while she advanced straight to Kaname's desk without hesitation. Stopping beside him, she commended his recent performance and placed a hand on his shoulder before shifting the topic to the vice priest's sudden arrest. Calmly adjusting her glasses, Mylene outlined the issue involving illegal medicine following new legal revisions, her measured tone carrying quiet authority. After briefly removing her glasses, she apologized for speaking too long and stepped back, leaving Kaname thoughtful about the deeper implications within the temple. Leaning close, Mylene asked if Kaname truly liked her glasses, though startled. He admitted they matched her refined appearance. Pleased by his answer, she smiled brightly and declared the glasses were her own creation. Kaname showed quiet surprise. With measured pride, Mylene explained, she designed only the frame while a specialist crafted the lenses. He responded with sincere appreciation. Touching her cheek thoughtfully, she mentioned that praise felt different after returning from a training journey. Confusion crossed Kaname's face, Curiosity led him to ask about that journey. Mylene watched him calmly as the classroom settled into silence. Mylene described her refinement training in metalwork abroad, displaying ornate accessories that reflected her dedication to craftsmanship. Kaname listened with quiet admiration. With lively gestures, she explained, gaining permission for extended leave and traveling eagerly to pursue her passion. Even the temple head had been surprised. Composed once more, Mylene stated that improving her skills was a personal effort, not a sudden ambition. Kaname apologized for taking her rest time, expressing gratitude for the conversation. She listened as Kaname carefully mentioned a small request he wished to make. Noticing the heavy box he carried, Mylene remarked that such weight should not be handled alone, watching him with measured concern. Carrying the wooden box, Kaname followed Mylene through the corridor as she asked him to bring it to her office. He agreed without complaint. Inside the administrative room, stacked books and documents filled the space. Kaname set the box down carefully while Mylene arranged nearby items. Holding the box, he mentioned that he had expected her involvement in recent matters concerning the former vice priest. She listened without visible surprise. After a brief pause, Mylene acknowledged his observation. Kaname placed the box where instructed and stepped back respectfully, opening the door. She remarked on his diligence. Kaname then asked whether she had summoned him solely for this task or for another purpose. Standing before the closed doors, Mylene revealed she had received a letter from the temple head regarding Kaname's recent actions. Turning toward him, she warned that his ability could shake the nation if mishandled. Should the temple control it poorly, political conflict might follow. Kaname answered steadily, stating that his resolve was already set despite the weight of her words. Observing him closely, Mylene remarked that if he lacked talent, she would not be concerned. She admitted her worry came from recognizing his true capability. With composed authority, she declared that she and the temple head would attend the upcoming Grand Council, intending to secure formal approval for the shrine's position. Kaname expressed hope that the upcoming council would proceed smoothly. Mylene reminded him that failure would leave no path of return. Seated calmly, she shifted the topic and called his name with quiet intent. Kaname faced her, sensing a deeper matter. With measured tone, Mylene asked about the possibility of her changing professions. The unexpected question caused him to hesitate. Concern crossed her face as she considered how the council might question her. Kaname realized his reaction had revealed too much. Composing himself, he admitted he had already determined that Mylene possessed the aptitude for a different path. She watched him closely, awaiting further explanation. Kaname told Mylene that any decision about changing professions must be made by her alone. She listened carefully, weighing his words. Soon after, they arrived at the Grand Council Hall, its vast structure reflecting the authority of the central temple. Inside, influential leaders from various regions gathered around a long table, their expressions stern as they assessed the situation. As the final members took their seats, the atmosphere grew formal and restrained, signaling the gravity of the assembly. With measured composure, the council head announced the opening of this year's meeting, while a representative voiced concern over shifting movements in a foreign nation. A Gallian representative reported increased visits from soldiers and knights. Urging an opposing leader noted that the Melheim Empire already possessed its own temple and advised further investigation before drawing conclusions. Debate intensified as factions divided between avoiding political involvement and asserting that all nations inevitably sought divine authority. Seated quietly, Mylene watched the exchange, recognizing how suspicion quickly replaced measured discussion. After hearing every side, the council head stated that decisive countermeasures were difficult for now, leaving the chamber tense and unresolved. Mylene observed that detailed information was already spreading among the temples. She warned that forcing one side to bear the burden would only destabilize the matter. A council member then asked whether any temple wished to raise a new proposal. Attention gradually shifted toward the Cusus temple. With composed resolve, Mylene formally requested permission to present Cusus temple's position before the assembly. Standing to address the chamber, a representative announced that Cusus temple had decided to establish a new division. Silence followed as leaders absorbed the declaration. Expressions around the table tightened, recognizing that this decision could alter the balance among the temples. Mylene supported the proposal despite visible resistance, while another representative explained that the plan had been prepared long in advance and was now ready for formal submission. Around the circular table, leaders listened as Cusus temple declared it would launch a new job, change initiative, drawing tense, calculating expressions from several council members. In a formal hall, officials gathered around a long table as attention turned toward an unusual event involving the temple. A young priest faced the senior official with steady confidence, showing no hesitation about his actions. While he smiled lightly, the official reminded everyone that no permission had been requested beforehand. Another attendant questioned the sudden connection to the Cusus temple, sensing unexpected change. Although concern remained among the group, the official declared the matter guided by divine will, bringing the discussion to a restrained end. Inside a quiet library, officials discussed reports about Cusus beginning a job. Change enterprise concerns spread as the implications became clear. A long-haired man reflected on cause and effect before urging preparation for urgent talks with Cusus. He ordered the Holy Knight to be summoned. Later, the senior official explained that the Temple Council had approved the matter by majority. Kaname listened as arrangements for further discussion were proposed. Kaname unfolded a letter handed to him. Carefully reading the added instruction, the document requested that Kaname personally evaluate Cusus's job changer and bring a companion, deepening the seriousness of the mission. In private chamber, the senior cleric spoke with measured confidence, while a young woman listened beside him. Kaname stood nearby, aware that his knowledge of the academy would soon be tested. Facing the cleric directly, Kaname accepted the warning that their opponent could not be handled carelessly. He understood that careful strategy would be required. Upon arrival at the grand doors, the group was permitted entry. Kaname's expression hardened as the chandelier light reflected the weight of the meeting. Seated across from them, the long-haired representative acknowledged the arranged discussion with formal courtesy. Recognition followed as Kaname's name was spoken, confirming he was the central figure behind the temple's new job changer. The long-haired representative studied Kaname with sharp interest, recalling earlier suspicions about his role as a job changer. Shifting the discussion forward, he urged that they address the central issue under the guidance of Cusus. A map was presented showing expansion beyond the capital, proposing new job, change facilities in border regions to strengthen national power. Seated calmly, the representative suggested dividing the considerable fees required for advanced job transitions. Kaname listened as the senior cleric questioned the meaning behind such high offerings, realizing the proposal demanded equal commitment and carried significant political weight. The long-haired representative argued that publicly increasing job changes could disturb social order, even if governance remained stable. He explained that strict conditions would prevent chaos, claiming unique job holders would not multiply recklessly under careful supervision. The senior cleric listened closely as the representative admitted he disliked the dominance of those born with rare talents. Coins and power were contrasted, emphasizing that wealth alone should not determine strength, though the church maintained the existing structure. With firm resolve, he concluded that even if fees were lowered, candidates seeking new professions would not be rejected, prioritizing broader benefit over exclusivity. Seated across the cleric, the long-haired representative cautioned that reckless control offered little advantage, especially with other powerful leaders already influencing job transitions. With a steady gaze, he maintained that devotion and ideals alone could not sustain a religious nation without practical structure. Listening carefully, the senior cleric admitted the proposal was not unreasonable, though financial balance between both sides had to remain equal. Rising concerns about heavy costs on border citizens encouraged acceptance of installment payments as a workable compromise. Beside the cleric, Kaname observed quietly while the discussion turned to revenue. Understanding that unchecked expansion might undermine the true purpose behind job change, the chamber doors opened, and a holy knight named Martina was announced, drawing attention from everyone inside. Clad in polished armor, Martina stepped forward with unwavering composure, while the long-haired representative formally presented the church's challenge to Cusus Temple. She declared that the contest would be decided through the Sword of Cartiers, demanding a proper duel against the temple's job changer. After brief consideration, the senior cleric accepted the condition, and Kaname calmly volunteered to stand as the opposing participant. Outside the towering cathedral, Martina prepared to carry out the sacred trial as Kaname followed, aware that this duel would shape the temple's future. Before the trial began, Martina explained that the event would test the Sword of Cartiers, a divine challenge she had never failed. Rows of stone pillars filled the arena, as the rules were declared simple: destroy all 100 and compete for the fastest time. At the signal, Martina moved instantly, her blade flashing as pillars shattered one after another under precise strikes. Gathering power, she released a sweeping arc of light that tore through the remaining columns in a single decisive motion. Dust settled across the ruined field while Kaname observed calmly, measuring the strength of the Holy Knight's overwhelming performance. Watching the shattered pillars, the young woman remarked that the remaining stones had fallen within the range of a single sweeping technique. Kaname turned calmly and assured her there was no need for concern, his expression steady despite the overwhelming display. Called to the starting position, he stepped forward as the official announced the Cusus Temple challenger. The senior cleric quietly asked whether Kaname possessed a proper sword. wondering if he intended to use the returned blade. Smiling faintly, Kaname stated that a weapon suited to his unique vocation required no sharp edge, leaving the others uncertain about his true strategy. A faint smile crossed Kaname's face as he decided to repay the earlier display with a demonstration of his own choosing. At the signal to begin, he closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the unique vocation he had selected for this trial. Opening his gaze, he activated dimensional severance, channeling unseen force through the blade in his grasp. Without direct contact, nearby stone pillars trembled and split apart, collapsing as if cut by an invisible edge. Fragments scattered across the arena, while observers realized that Kaname's strike ignored distance, slicing through rows of stone in a single controlled sweep. Dust drifted through the arena as the final stone block crashed down, and Kaname lowered his blade, acknowledging that the number of pillars had slightly delayed him. Results were announced soon after, declaring that Martina required 120 seconds, while Kaname completed the trial in only 30. Shock spread among the observers as the long-haired representative processed the unexpected defeat of the undefeated Holy Knight. Accepting the outcome, he stated that the defeated side had no choice, then turned toward the cleric to address the agreed conditions. With a composed yet intense expression, he urged them to conclude negotiations, questioning the true reason the Archbishop had sought such authority. After the duel, Martina approached Kaname with calm admiration, acknowledging that witnessing every pillar fall so cleanly had impressed her. While he steadied his breathing from the strain of using a high-tier vocation, she questioned what profession allowed such a distant severing strike. Kaname explained that the kingdom's first ruler once held the advanced class of Sword Saint, leaving her momentarily silent before thanking him for speaking openly. With a faint smile, Martina remarked that he seemed favored by powerful figures, then suggested he might formally present his proposal, rather than rely on divine trials. Declaring future cooperation as allies under the Archbishop's supervision, she extended goodwill, and Kaname returned the gesture with composed acceptance. Their hands clasped firmly, sealing cooperation as the tension of rivalry faded into cautious mutual respect. Kaname stopped the discussion after hearing the church plan to copy the job, changing shrine. He quietly listened while the others explained the idea. Soon, the church announced a new shrine near the border. Lower fees and installment payments attracted many people, while several groups began supporting the project. The leaders believed the growing number of skilled workers would strengthen nearby regions and reduce monster damage. Some followers still questioned the church's true intention. Kaname learned that large donations from the church were being used to fund the construction of the new shrine. One member suspected the Archbishop planned something beyond simple expansion. Kaname agreed to support the church's public demonstration during the annual festival. The group prepared carefully while others questioned the true purpose behind the event. He later revealed that the shrine needed guards for the demonstration. Several people quickly realized Kaname himself would become involved in the plan. On the way through the village, Kaname noticed a small girl playing beside a strange rabbit-like creature named Carol. The creature happily ran toward Kaname, while the girl greeted him with excitement from outside her house. As Carol approached calmly, the girl thanked Kaname for accepting her sudden request without hesitation. A villager admitted he could not believe his son suddenly had the chance to become a blacksmith through job transfer. Doubt spread across the room. Kaname calmly explained that the church understood why many people remained suspicious about the announcement. After hearing several successful examples, the villagers slowly accepted that the rumors about job transfer were actually true. They then questioned why Fame had been chosen first. Kane revealed that he personally requested Fame because there was an important reason behind the decision. The church finally announced that a public job transfer demonstration would be held during the upcoming religious festival. Kaname explained that skilled production workers were extremely rare. If Fame became a blacksmith through job transfer, the church believed the results would greatly benefit the region. Although the offer sounded promising, Fame hesitated. His father reminded him that the final choice belonged to him alone. The family realized a blacksmith's income could improve their lives. Even Carol might finally receive better care and new clothes. Fame worried that refusing now would destroy his chance to change jobs in the future, but Kaname assured him the church would not force payment. After thinking carefully, Fame admitted he no longer disliked the idea of job transfer. Fame finally decided to accept the job transfer. He wanted to become a skilled blacksmith and earn money through his own ability, leaving his father deeply moved. His father proudly hugged him after hearing the decision, while Kaname quietly watched the emotional moment from nearby. Before leaving, Kaname encouraged Fame to work hard and prepare for his new future as a blacksmith. Later, Kaname headed toward the church while thinking about the risks if Fame's transfer failed during the demonstration. At the church entrance, Kaname met Richard again after a long time apart and immediately sensed another important matter waiting for him. Richard teased Kaname after hearing rumors about him becoming a famous special priest before the festival even began. Kaname tried to avoid the attention. The conversation shifted toward Kaname's earlier achievements, including defeating a reckless knight during a theological debate that surprised many people. Richard laughed and compared Kaname to a heroic figure, then asked him for support in handling future problems inside the church. While walking through the church grounds, Richard warned that their next opponent would not be defeated through simple tricks or clever words. Kaname realized the church's situation had become more serious than before, especially with powerful followers now gathering around Cusus Temple. Kaname formally introduced himself as a special priest of Cusus Temple, after being invited to an important meeting with several nobles. One noble named Eisen Ramat Claudius showed immediate interest in Kaname, and carefully observed his reaction during the discussion. The nobles explained that they wanted skilled individuals to undergo public job transfers during the upcoming religious festival. The proposal quickly caught Kaname's attention. Eisen directly questioned whether Kaname truly served as the temple's job transfer priest, but Kaname avoided revealing too much authority or information. The meeting ended with the nobles requesting support from Cusus Temple and presenting Richard's recommendation to strengthen their proposal. Richard warned that recommending Kaname too strongly could attract dangerous attention from powerful nobles connected to the church. Eisen believed someone with job transfer abilities would naturally create anxiety among influential people. Richard jokingly noted that Kaname's recommendation letter now carried unusual value. Although Eisen wished to continue the discussion, Kaname politely apologized to Richard for causing extra trouble through the growing rumors. Eisen then asked what benefits Cusus Temple expected in return for supporting the nobles' proposal during the festival. One knight explained that Mihail constantly prayed to Cusus Temple, hoping to receive a special class through the church's transfer ritual. Kaname explained that publicly announcing the special class transfer would benefit Cusus Temple by attracting more visitors and followers. He also planned to display people's names and special classes through magical devices, so the audience could clearly witness the results. One knight warned that if Cusus Temple started a major new project, Mihail and his allies might eventually cut ties with the church. Kaname accepted that risk without hesitation. Kaname then stated that Eisen possessed the rare ability to judge people fairly by their talent and potential, instead of status alone. Finally, Kaname suggested that Eisen himself might become the church's best partner in the future. Kaname warned that talented people were difficult to find, just like rare birds hidden in nature. Eisen seemed impressed by the comparison and quietly listened. After hearing Kaname's explanation, Eisen admitted that Richard had introduced an unexpectedly interesting person to the nobles. The atmosphere inside the room softened. Eisen openly stated that he had grown fond of Kaname's way of thinking and wanted to continue working with him. Kaname then explained that supporting Mihail's job transfer could benefit both the nobles and Cusus Temple during the festival. The knights quickly accepted the proposal. As the meeting ended, Eisen looked forward to the coming festival and anticipated an exciting celebration ahead. The day of the grand religious festival finally arrived. Mihail waited nervously near the stage, while crowds slowly gathered around Cusus Temple. Kaname noticed Mihail's anxiety and tried to calm him. Mihail admitted he still could not believe he might truly receive a special class through job transfer. Soon several guards and church members assembled to secure the area. Karun officially began her duty protecting Mihail during the event. The scientesses also prepared themselves carefully, because the festival crowd was far larger and more excited than expected. As everything became ready, the church staff guided Kaname and Mihail toward the stage where the public demonstration would finally begin. The grand stage opened before a massive crowd as the church prepared to begin the public job transfer ceremony during the festival. Mihail stepped forward nervously while many spectators stared at the mysterious scientist beside Kaname for the first time. Large status screens suddenly appeared above the stage, displaying information for the audience as the ceremony officially started. The crowd reacted with shock and excitement. Kaname calmly instructed everyone to focus on the projected status display, while the ritual advanced step by step. Finally, Kaname activated his power in front of the entire festival, ready to reveal the truth behind job transfer. The masked scientist quietly activated the ritual while light surrounded the stage during the public ceremony. Mihail suddenly felt power rising from inside his body. He realized the job transfer had truly begun. Moments later, the status display changed before the crowd's eyes, revealing Mihail's new class as a knight. Shock spread across the festival grounds. The audience erupted with excitement after witnessing the successful transfer. Meanwhile, the scientists calmly smiled beside Kaname as their plan succeeded perfectly.